Camden Select Board. We stream live at youtube.com/Town of Camden, Maine. And if you wish to participate remotely, go to our website and then click the link to the Zoom meeting. And we will do our best to pay attention. If you would like to participate, raise your hand and we will spot you on the screen and allow you to participate. We've got Tom participating remotely and the rest of us are here. And I would first like to thank Chris for handling the meeting in December when I was away. On to the first order of business, which is public comment on non-agenda items. I see B.D. Parker, please come up to the what?
Podium.
Podium.
It's a
Forgive my loss of
Hi.
vocabulary.
B.D. Parker, and I live up Washington Street in Camden. And I should be here at the end when you talk about pesticides, but I won't because I'll be too tired. But I wanted to take the opportunity to mention the AstroTurf problem that we're going to be voting on next Tuesday, January 14th, in the 5 towns, including Camden, and for the bond money for the school. And some of that, a big chunk of it, is proposed for putting AstroTurf on the playing fields. And we thought we sort of fought this back a few months ago. Maybe it was last year, but it seems like it's acceptable now. And I understand that the pressure of climate change, the more mud in the winter, just like Northern Europe. So you should talk to Northern Europe about what they do with rugger. I think they just get muddy. So, and the idea that we would cover a field that absorbs water and photosynthesizes and smells different in the different parts of the year, that we would cover it with plastic, which is really hard to dispose of afterwards. I don't know if they have a plan for that. It's just appalling to a number of us. And so I want people to know that that vote exists. I could quickly go through the reasons that plastic's toxic. It's getting into our bloodstreams. Let me see, I actually have some notes, but the nanoplastics, the high temperatures during hot weather, which is going to go on getting hotter. I know we have a relatively cool climate so far. The injuries to players is one of the main concerns. And people who know about these injuries, you can look it up, what happens, because this plastic behaves quite differently from grass. And it can be too hard or too slick, and there are different kinds of injuries. The water cycles, I said the disposal. The fossil fuel industry is really pushing plastic now because they hope to make up for the loss of fossil fuel money. The fossil fuel produces the plastic. So if you can put AstroTurf all over high school fields, you're way ahead economically. Another kind of injury is the burns that you get when you slide, and they can be infected because plastic, just like with a cutting board, it doesn't harbor the natural bacteria which fights off the worst infections, so these things get infected. I'll just stop there and appeal. I think that the town is not connected enough with the school system unless you have a kid in school, and then you know what's going on. But this is kind of sneaking up on us, and there's a vote on Tuesday. So maybe you guys can pay more attention to what schools are up to. They're getting into something that's really a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You don't need to ask me questions.
Any other public comment on non-agenda items? Yes, sir. Please come up to the microphone and give us your name and where you're from.
My name is Doc Wallace. I live on Elm Street. I know you don't take comments on agenda items. We can only speak on non-agenda. So I have an agenda formatting question. Do you permit the public to talk about an item that is on the agenda prior to the motion being taken?
Yes, this part of the agenda is just for comments about things that are not on the agenda. So if you've got a concern about a specific agenda item, when we are discussing that, you're welcome to introduce your thoughts at that time.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else have on a non-agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we will go on to the approval of the minutes from the December 17th meeting. Any comments or corrections, deletions?
I move that we approve the minutes from December 17th.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
No, it's good.
Wow, okay, that's a first. All those in favor? Excellent. Minutes are approved. Thank you. We
I
have
don't know
not-
if we're supposed to make sure that Tom, like, if they can.
Oh, Tom, I'm sorry.
Aye, approve the minutes, please.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
We have nothing on the consent agenda, so now we'll just go on to the public hearings of the liquor licenses, the establishments under 5 years that require public hearing. We have Albatross at 115 Elm Street for renewal of the Class 1 restaurant liquor license, Cafe Louis at 50 Elm Street for the renewal of the Class 1 restaurant liquor license, and First Fig at 31 Elm Street for a renewal of the Class 3 beer and wine liquor license. Does anyone want to speak to any of those license renewals? Okay, seeing none, we have those packets in our, packet, and I think they're here for our signature.
I would move that we approve the liquor licenses for Albatross at 115 Elm Street, Cafe Louis at 50 Elm Street, and First Fig at 31 Elm Street.
I'll second.
Have a second? Any discussion?
Oh, just, is this, are these?
The only discussion? Never mind. I'm just validating that those are in it. That's all. I'm slow.
Is this is this the online, can they do this online now?
Yes.
I was happy to see some of the questions have changed. So I didn't think that was ever going to happen. So thank you, guys. Very antiquated application process in the past, so it looks like an improvement.
Do you see what you need, Chris?
Well, weren't we going to at some point, and this is maybe a question for Jeremy, going to address the whole restaurant trap pipe
Oh, that is a good.
issue?
Grease trap. So these are different. These are liquor licenses,
So it
not
doesn't
our vitular.
So it doesn't-
licenses.
apply. Okay,
Yes.
just curious.
But it's a good question to bring up when we do vitular licenses.
So we have a
So be
motion.
ready for that question next time, guys, that we have
Ready.
liquor licenses.
Okay,
Well, now we can preempt because he's given us a little preview.
there we
No,
go.
that's a good reminder. That really is.
So we have a
Wait.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Brilliant, okay.
Aye.
5-0-0. Select Board reports. Who wants to go first?
No, I don't have anything to report. I've had several calls about the pesticide application, but it's on the agenda, so we're good. Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple things. I would say in terms of the school stuff, having a child in the school, or a couple of them actually, one high schooler, I know we don't get into responding during public comment, but it is important for everybody to know that that is a separate process. But the school board for the last several years at least, has been live streaming all of their meetings, just like we do. So there are hours and hours of YouTube recordings of those meetings. They held a public hearing the other night and got a lot of comments, and there was a lot of response. And they have, just like we have committees, they have committees. Committees have recommended this over many years. There's been a lot of back and forth. So it has been really thoroughly discussed, and I would encourage people to go and watch some of that stuff and then make your decision. The other thing that I just wanted to bring up is that the Conservation Commission, one of the things that we talk about sometimes is are some of the shoreline projects that people notice happening around town, and there are especially many of them now, given all the repairs to seawalls and all of the nervousness about the storms that we've had. And so usually when people start to ask questions about, an excavator that they're seeing in Sherman's Cove, that's already when a project has been, approved. There is no public input at that point. The state holds its own public input process for some of this stuff through the NERPA application process. And what we've found a lot is that, the notices go directly to certain abutters, but a lot of people don't, just don't find out about it. And so the Conservation Commission would like, as is done in many other towns, sometimes by ordinance, to have a copy of those applications anytime that the state law requires that a copy of the application be on file with the town office, which you'll see in a lot of these notices. So-and-so is notifying you of notice of intent to file this application, and a copy is going to be at the town office. So anytime that happens, if we could be notifying, just sending a copy of that application, which is a public document, to the Conservation Commission. I don't know if sometimes there are other probably relevant committees, because then the state has that 30-day usually period where they receive comments, and then they decide whether to hold a public hearing or not. And it would be, a lot of the time, if it ever does get to us, we're looking at it after that process. So just looking for a way to sort of formally request that the town office, the planning office, the codes office, whoever it is that gets those, kind of make the effort to send certainly all the NERPA applications, at least to the Conservation Commission. And that is it
Great.
for
Thank
me.
you. Chris, what you got?
Sure. The McGonagall River Advisory Committee continues to meet to discuss their recommendation that they're going to make to the select board. I'm just saying they have got another meeting Wednesday, January 8th, tomorrow, 4:15 to 6:15 at the office here. Which room is that one going to be? The conference room right here on Wednesday, for those who are interested in seeing what's discussed. They are on the River Committee. And Allison, you and I have, we're going the 13th of January.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have our first meeting with the folks from the McGonagall Watershed Association. They've selected a couple people with experience with hydrology and the history of the lake level policy. And so we're going to be looking at the lake level and dam operations policy that was the updates were last approved in 2009. And so we're going to take a look at that and see if there are opportunities to things that should be updated. And if and when we get anywhere meaningful, we will bring those recommendations back to the select board.
Good.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. All of the items that I was going to bring up are actually on the agenda as well, as far as parking, pesticides, and the harbor licenses. So I'm just going to let that all play out. So we'll go to the town manager.
Oh, Susan, before you move on.
And Tom, thank you.
Thank you. The planning board has a meeting on January 16th at 5 p.m. Regarding accessory dwellings. I believe they want to make a slight amendment to come in compliance with the state definition of accessory dwellings. Again, January 16th at 5 p.m.
Thank you, Tom. Planning Board. Okay. Audra.
All right, so I will make sure this report, the written version, is included in the packet when we repost it online, because I know it's not in your packets tonight. So with the Opera House, the calendar for 2025 is filling up fast. In the new season, it's going to begin with the well-loved Everyman Repertory Theater radio play. Next up will be the newly reopened Blue Cafe Resurgent Dance Company. And there's also going to be a film called A Piece of Forest. In February, the Banff Film Festival is going to happen. A sound check concert featuring Rachel Sumner and Traveling Light, and also the Camden Conference. So using donations from the Community Arts Fund, the Opera House is going to upgrade the sound system and lighting for the Blue Cafe, which is up on the 3rd floor of the Opera House. It's a intimate performance space, and it's free concerts, and a lot of it is local or main acts. So it's a great place for local artists or main artists to come and get some exposure, and for members of the community to come and enjoy these for free. So Jazz in June, the slate for that is in place, and the headliners are going to be the Greg Abate Trio, the Julia Keefe Quartet, which she's a rising star as an Indigenous vocalist, and the Spyro Gyra 50th anniversary concert. Also, the Missoula Children's Theater Camp has been booked for the week of July 7th to 12th. And I think that the community is increasingly becoming aware of this, and it's been great that we've been able to offer this as an option, because summer camp and having something to do with kids when school isn't in session is quite a challenge for parents. So I think that for kids who are inclined to be involved in theater, this has been really great, and we're happy to be able to bring it back again this year. And what they do is they learn the play, they rehearse the play, and then they're able to perform it for their parents or community members at the end of the week. So in the town office, absentee ballots are available for the January 14th Five-Town CSD referendum that BD talked about earlier, until 3:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 9th. So that's this January, 2 days from now. That's the last opportunity that you have to come and vote absentee for those with special circumstances. So if you have any questions, please contact our town clerk, Katrina Oakes. So the harbor waitlist bills have been mailed out, and the actual mooring and finger float invoices will be mailed out within the next week. Dog license renewals are due by the end of January. And if you don't have your renewal done by that time, the state's going to impose a $25 per dog late fee. So please renew your dog licenses. With the fire department, during the evening of December 30th, 2024, a longtime member of the Camden Fire Department succumbed to a challenging multi-year treatment of cancer. So Tom Quantrell began serving with the fire department in August of 1983. And in December of 2023, he was recognized for 40 years of service to our community and the department. So even when Tom wasn't in a position where he could be an active firefighter, he was a fire police. So in addition to his service with Camden Fire, Tom also served for many years with Camden First Aid Association, and the family is going to be publishing information about a spring 2025 remembrance service in the upcoming weeks. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody recognized Tom. At the Snow Bowl, the variable frequency drive that controls the snowmaking water pump failed recently. And this impacted the mountain's ability to make as much snow as anticipated. So this was one of the major reasons behind the closure when we had that warm weather during that, the rain spell and the warm snap. So that was unfortunate. But thanks in part from a donation from the Ragged Mountain Area Foundation and a wonderful contractor, Headstrom Electrical, who was very, very understanding and very willing to work with the town. We were able to make the repairs to the system so that it'll be fully operational again on Wednesday. So the foundation, thank them for paying for half of the cost, and Headstrom Electrical for, being so willing to work with us on making sure that we could get that work done quickly and open up snowmaking again. So in the month of December, the Camden Snowball hosted 3,352 unique guests. So that's a very large number, and very exciting that we had so many people joining us at the Snowball. And so based on the improved data that we have from our new RFID tracking system, there were 19,145 total runs over the holidays. And that was from the opening date, which was December 14th. And we just wanted to thank our very talented snowmakers and trail groomers. So when the Snow Bowl opens tomorrow, so on Wednesday, they're going to be opening 2 additional ski and snowboard trails, the Lower Muscle Ridge and Windjammer. And those are ones that, the real diehard skiers are always waiting for us to open. So thank you to our snowmakers and trail groomers. They've done a really fantastic job as always. So for assessing, Mountainside Park was recently revalued, and that came about as a result of the assessors looking at ratios and wanting to make sure that those were correctly being valued. Also, Kerry Leishman is on the MMA, Maine Municipal Association's Legislative Policy Committee, and he's specifically working on tax reform legislation, so property tax reform legislation. So cloture is on January 10th. So the bill work will come to an end very soon, and then they'll be submitting a collection of 8 to 10 bills, and most of them have to do with property tax relief. Jeremy, who is Jeremy Martin, our Planning and Development Director, who is Kerry Leishman's alternate, met on Zoom with a representative Gear from Kennebunkport about short-term rental legislation that she's going to be submitting. So they're looking at ways of collecting revenue from short-term rentals that will be very close to how we've categorized them in our new code amendment. So that was a really good collaboration and really good interest from legislators. And that's it.
Well, and based on what I saw, taking a look at the Snow Bowl too, it's not that we didn't have any snowmaking equipment, because I saw that we're still making it, just maybe not as much as they wanted, but just so people knew that, yeah, we still were taking advantage of the cold days and that we had, even though it was more limited, it was still operating partially, better than none. And on the dog licenses, just based on my little personal experience with my 2 black labs, make sure you have your rabies certificate if you come in, because that is necessary to have in hand when you go ahead and get your dog license. I had them this time. I didn't have them last year. And I'm even on time this year, which is, that's new. It does take a couple more minutes because there is a new system that people have to input. So it does take maybe 5 minutes where it used to be 1 minute to get it done.
But if you
Real
bring
cheap.
your dog, there's treats.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And they didn't give me any treats.
No, they wouldn't,
Live dogs only.
but live dogs only.
All right.
There's no takeaway treats. You have to have the dog present for treats. Okay.
Since we are dwelling on the dog licenses, I can't resist. Any word on when Camden will be on the list of towns where you can renew your dog license online?
I'll speak to the clerk and get back to you about that. That is something that I talked about with her and with Janice.
Because there's a really, really long list of towns that are on there, and you go scroll down and you're like, CA, and then it goes to some other.
It goes to CR.
Yes.
CH.
Looking forward to that because I too struggle to do that on time at the right time. And they will send the police to your house eventually as a friendly, as a reminder in a nice way, but it does, some people don't like it. So all the more incentive.
Okay.
Don't ask me how I know.
A friend told me that's a possibility. So action items, we have the first one is approval of the commercial fishermen applications. We have those all in our packets. See, the harbor master is here. Is there anything you'd like to add to these?
Good evening. Is there anything I can do to help? Do you have any questions or?
Why is the Dominic Goya Camden Harbor Cruises not recommended, and where do you stand on that?
I'm not sure why it's not recommended. I wasn't at that harbor committee meeting. I did read through the minutes. But it's a good question. I was a little confused about that. How I stand on that is, since I've been harbor master, nothing's changed in the ordinance in Article 5, regulations concerning docks and floats, launching ramps, and 108-18. It says fishermen floats adjacent to the town landing, lying northwesterly of the town floats, shall be designated as the commercial fishermen floats. Use of these floats shall be by permit issued by the select board to applicants holding a commercial fishing license under the following order of preference. So obviously the folks that wrote this probably said to themselves, hey, at one point we're going to have more applicants than the facility can hold. And if that's the case, let's give the select board an idea of how they should kind of like prioritize it. But we have room. We're not out of room. In fact, we usually, back 12 years ago, we used to have 12 permit holders using that. Now we have 7. And out of those 7, only 3 are actually really active fishermen. So I wasn't sure why they did that. I did have a conversation with Dom earlier, and well, I mean, he might want to come up and speak on why he actually rescinded his application today because he thought he was opening up a can of worms. But anyway, I mean, if you have any questions on how I'm reading the ordinance and how I've managed that system, I could.
Allison?
Yeah, I think that's helpful, sort of the, if you go down maybe what the preference list is and how, if only, what I don't think anybody wants to do is get into like full audits of just how much fishing each individual boat is doing right now. And that hasn't been the past practice from my understanding. It's been a kind of a marine industry / commercial fishing, and some fish more and some fish less. And I agree that if we're having more applicants than we have room for, then we really do have to dig hard into that. Is this your primary source of income? Are you a Camden resident? All of these things. But can you just expand a little bit on sort of how that's been done over the years without going through everybody?
Yeah, like I said, it says right here that the number 1 is the commercial full-time fishermen, and inside that category, this tells the select board, give them precedence over the part-time fishermen, and then they break it into three parts. If they're a commercial full-time fisherman and you have too many of those that have all applied, then you would go say the current permit holders who have always been there get a little bit of looking at as far as preference. And if you're a Camden resident, then they want to make sure that, I guess since they're paying taxes for the facility, they actually get preference over a non-resident. That's all it says in the ordinance. How we've done it, again, we've never actually had a point where it's like, oh, we have too many, so we have to not allow. I've never had someone apply in my 25 years to use the fisherman area and be denied. This is the first time.
And now, how much oversight is there in terms of policing that every single use of that float is strictly related to fishing? I know a lot of people have different businesses where there's.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the beginning of the season, you have a lot of folks that have marine industry, like Two Harbor Marine, Brad and Adam Scott, who have always held a permit to use that dock. They don't actually fish off that dock, but in the early spring and late fall, they're doing a lot of work because they're putting everyone's moorings in. They're doing work. They're fixing floats and wharfs that have broken because of angry oceans. And same with Toby Winkelhofer. He doesn't use that in the spring for fishing. He uses it to, he's got a lot of folks that he does his moorings for. So they're inspecting, they're putting moorings in. And then as the season, the summer starts, all of a sudden, you start, the traps come in, they're loading traps. Now they're fishing off it. But again, we only have 3 active fishermen. Toby, Barney Appleton, who doesn't fish that many traps. And now we have Herb Barrel, who usually fishes off Steamboat Landing, but he's told me last year, he goes, I'm starting to slow up a little bit, so I think I'm going to use that because it's got the crane. So, but again, Herb doesn't have that many traps either. So
is that really what it is? Access by the fisherman dock? Which dock are we really talking about? Just for my recollection, is it the one right by the crane?
right by the crane, those 3, yeah.
And okay, those 3.
And you could say,
Floating,
the way the
right,
ordinance
yeah.
says, it says that's an area.
Yeah.
It says the harbor master's boat goes there too, which I don't anymore. But yeah, it's that area. And again, I think over the years, I've treated it as not just commercial fishermen, but also anyone with a marine industry. Art Tibbetts has always had a permit. He's not a fisherman. Of course, I've only seen him use that twice in 25 years, but he wants to keep it in case he ever does.
So they all take turns with the float. These are boats that have moorings, and then they're taking turns using the floats.
Yeah, the float right next to the crane is actually for load and unload. The other one next to it is if you got a broken starter, you go ahead and if you have use my permission, then you can leave it there for a couple nights so you can get someone to fix it. Kind of like that. It's been kind of lax.
So it sounds to me like there is adequate resource and space. And I guess I am, because I wasn't able to be at that meeting, and I did send an email to Elliot today, but I haven't heard back from him as to why the Joyas and Periwinkle might not be able to have access.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, when-
they
I mean, it's
explained
not,
it,
it
but-
doesn't sound like it's a lack of resource.
No, and I don't impugn the harbor committee for deliberating about this, but I think maybe when they were looking at the ordinance, maybe they treated this as if there was like 25 other applicants that were full-time fishermen. And so they're going to say, we're going to deny you because we want them to come in, but
But there weren't.
there aren't. It's only, I guess, reason that I can come up with of why they.
I mean, I guess my only concern is there someone who has a viable fishing business who is being denied access when we have adequate space?
Well, again, they didn't apply.
No.
So we'll never.
Well, they did, but then withdrew.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about Dominic.
Yeah.
Well, he can speak for that. He's here.
Yeah, I
I
would,
feel like everybody shouldn't have to, that this is a fairly easy one at this point, I don't think that we should apply a standard to one applicant that we don't apply to the others. And so unless we're going to have, and maybe there is a time and a place in the future to really get to know everybody's business, but I would prefer not to ask Dominic to come up here and defend this right now, because it seems that we should be using the same standard. There is room. Now we're getting the word out too, that they're actually, there's additional capacity. So by all means, others that have, commercial fishing businesses can know that Camden has more space, but I think we should just go ahead and approve all of the applicants that the harbor master recommended to us at this time.
And what about what about the last one then? I mean, the one on the list that says, I mean, I'd rather have Dominic get what he should have, space.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they withdrew because they didn't want to make a fuss, but, there just isn't a lack of space, and
we're
that's the main-
speculating, and the people who know this are in the room. So I would really appreciate just understanding what that discussion was. And again, just if, I don't want to try to override what the harbor committee did. If there's an occasion to revisit it, Steve Gold is here. He was in that room as well. I'm just unwilling to have somebody denied access when it appears that there's enough access.
Right.
So if Dominic wants to speak to this briefly, I would appreciate hearing what his position is.
There's three.
Well,
No.
yeah, and the other thing is, what about the withdrawn? I mean, do we have to accept the withdrawal? Well, I don't know. Does he have to reapply what's the process?
Well, I mean, maybe it's a moot point and you're not pursuing it at this point, which means that we don't really need to talk about it, but. Just knowing that it went around and around at the
I
meeting.
mean, it was a 3-2 vote,
Yeah.
so obviously they don't agree.
Dominic Joya. I live in Camden, work in Camden. My wife, Liz, and I have Camden Harbor Cruises. So yeah, it was kind of, Liz came home and said it was quite a discussion at the Harbor Committee. She's on the Harbor Committee. And then also mentioned, she's like, well, then one person even mentioned, it may put the day sailor permit in jeopardy and all this stuff. And I was kind of like, this is not worth it then at this point. So that's kind of why I went to rescind. But then talking with Steve later and kind of realizing, especially nowadays, you kind of have to wear a lot of hats to make a boat work. And so, yeah, in the spring, we've done in the past, we do halibut fishing. And I was actually talking with Liz later. I was like, well, I have a tuna license too. We haven't used it in the past, but if the commercial, which there wasn't a lot of room on the application to put we have probably 6 different licenses that go with that boat. So I just put as much as I could and it was still crammed in there. But yeah, so we do quite a few different things and it kind of just seemed a little overwhelming, especially for my wife, who's a bit of a worrier and she's on the Harbor Committee and all that stuff. So I was just like, I'll just make it go away. But I mean, if we could use it, that would be great. If it's going to be a big deal, then I'll just keep doing what we've been doing.
So the basic question is, do you want to resubmit your application, yes or no? It sounds
Sure.
like yes.
Yes. I mean, yes, I do.
There you
It's kind of the old saying, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, and well, I mean, we can't
I
take
didn't want
action
to,
on
I
it
didn't
right
want to
now
put
because
her
we
in a
don't have
weird
a,
situation.
we don't have a current application.
Oh, yeah.
But
But I
it's
can,
okay,
that's fine.
Allison,
I don't,
settle down.
if it's going to cause a big deal, then it doesn't.
No, I mean, it's not a big deal. What I'm curious about is there a time frame? Have we missed a window?
I just did it this morning.
You just did the withdrawal.
Yeah.
But is there a window for reapplying?
Oh, because this guy.
I think there is. I mean, it's pretty unique that just what just happened, but if you just withdrew today, I think verbally you could say, I now,
We were just curious, is there a specific time when applications need
Have
to
to be
be
submitted.
Well, yeah, I mean, the ordinance says that if you want to use that, you have to submit it by November 15th.
15th.
And he did.
And he did.
I mean,
But
I
we
think
just
you
have
can
to
withdraw
decide
the
whether.
withdrawal. He missed the deadline for withdrawing before the select board meeting. I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can look at this. We don't normally make last minute changes to the applications anyway on the morning. So I don't see any reason why he can't withdraw the withdrawal rather than saying that we can't act on it tonight and then he has to resubmit it. I just feel like that's unnecessarily.
Yeah. Coming.
Good.
Who's that?
Peter is not on mute, that's all.
Oh, okay.
It's calling his dog in.
That's no. As we are.
I would,
So just to clarify, Steve, we're not maxed out on the space that's available there.
No. No, we're not.
And did he pay his $25 fee and did he get refunded?
No, it hasn't been refunded yet.
There we go.
There you go.
perfect, nice clarification.
Good.
I would move that we approve the
All 6?
commercial fisherman applications that were recommended by the harbor master, which I believe are 7, is that 6 or 7?
Yeah. The only application we don't have is the withdrawn application, but we must have that in our file somewhere.
Mhm. Yeah,
Can we add that to the packet, Audra, after the fact
Yes.
for the record? So
Yes.
it's there. And then we just take the statement of officially withdrew his withdrawal and move on.
Yes, I think, is that a second? Or did I make a motion or did I need
I
to?
don't know. Nobody made a motion.
I think I did.
Oh,
Yes,
you did.
you did make, I will second that for your, all 7 then.
All set.
Because
Eight.
you 8,
Eight, excuse me.
because you said as recommended by the Harbor Committee, but.
Harbor Master.
She said Harbor Master.
Master,
Master.
okay, thank you. Because the Harbor Committee made a separate
Right.
recommendation.
And we have a second.
Yes,
Okay,
on all 8.
all right. And in discussion, I see Steve Gold's hand is up and he is on the Harbor Committee and was present in that meeting, so I would value his input.
Without taking a position on this, because you weren't there and Steve wasn't there, I'd just like to explain what happened at that meeting.
Please.
It was initially brought up, and we felt, the 3-2, the board felt that because he wasn't a fisherman and because of the complication of what he would be keeping on the dock and the fact that he had a day sailor permit, it was voted down. Also in realization that we're talking about the dock space, but a parking space also goes with this permit, or the right to park there, which is probably limited less than the existing permits that we have. In the ensuing discussion, it was brought up that in the ordinance, in order to get one of those permits, you have to have a commercial fishing license. And it was initially felt that Dominic didn't have a commercial fishing license. And I think as a result of a phone call between him and his wife, it was discovered that he had a commercial halibut license. It was also discovered that a commercial halibut license is for 2 weeks. That's the extent of the halibut fishing
4
period.
weeks.
And
4
that
weeks is 4 weeks.
we would be granting year-round privileges on the basis of a 2-week license. And for that reason, it was again voted down 3-2. And that's just how it happened.
But given that the license is for such a limited time period, the need for the access would also be limited. It would be, and then you have a day sailor business that takes up the bulk. I mean, the fishing is for a limited, very limited time, and then you kick into your summer business. That, Allison.
I just think that this is a very slippery slope to go down this line of questioning with one applicant, because the other permit holders are, some of them very likely are not going to hold up to the scrutiny of the standard that we're applying here. If the standard is going to be that we're going to evaluate the number of days that somebody goes out fishing, that hasn't happened in the past with the others. And so I think without knowing it, we are applying an unfair standard to one applicant that could then be inferred to mean that nobody else can use their permit, their commercial fisherman's dock permit, unless they are directly commercially fishing at the time.
See, I would argue that in fact, we are applying the standard more fairly.
Well, but then we
Right.
should go and apply the standard. There isn't a prohibition on the use of that dock by permit holders for non-commercial fishing purposes. Whether or not there should be is a discussion that I'm not weighing in on. But in terms of what is happening and what has happened, that's just not the standard. And if you start saying that, then it would be disruptive to other permit holders.
But I agree with you. And I also want to say that let's say next November, we have 25 applicants, then I think we do need to hold everyone to the candle and say, okay, are you a resident? Are you a full-time fisherman? Is that your main salary, for your home and stuff like that? Right now, we have room. So the reason that this ordinance, the only thing we have is this ordinance, is one section. And I think the reason they put that in there is because they thought we're going to have more applicants than the facility can hold, but we're not there.
I mean, we've got people that fish out of Rockport, but they use this one for different purposes. And I don't want to weigh in and say that I think that's right or wrong, but it is what's happening. And whether or not we're aware of it or not.
I mean, I guess my feeling is I am reluctant to undermine the work of the committee and I know that it was a lengthy discussion that went on for some time, and that it's considered. So we have a motion that included
She intended to include all 8.
all 8.
I would say that the committee wasn't unanimous on this decision, and it could also be considered undermining the harbor master. So there was no unanimous feeling on this issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and the minutes here that came from.
And some of what was discussed, I did watch some of the meeting, and I think that they're asking really good questions. I just think that they're only asking those questions about one applicant, and that's not fair.
Not fair to them, to
To the one
joiners.
applicant, if they're
To the
only
joiners.
asking.
And it sounds like there is desire to know more about what everybody is doing with that permit. And I think that's fine and valuable. I just think we shouldn't do it with only one. And that there's a great conversation to be had next year about stricter criteria. And that can be something that the Harbor Committee should look at. I mean, we could say tonight, hey, Harbor Committee, take a harder look at the use of those floats and what's beneficial to the community and to the permit holders. And
Yeah, that might merit a good discussion moving forward. I mean, in the past, it's worked great. The fact that you've got, I consider that in my own mind, not really a fisherman float, but more of like a commercial, marine industry commercial float.
Right.
So some people like our Tibbetts, he has this marine industry. He's not a fisherman, but he's always been granted that because he needs a spot. And he's not just a resident, he's not on the water for pleasure. He's got a business and he does things that serves the boating public, just like Two Harbor Marine, just like Toby does for half the time when he's doing his mooring stuff. So that's a great discussion to have. If you want it just to be commercial fishermen, or how do we want it to move forward from here?
I mean, working waterfront businesses is sort of how it's been applied in the past.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve all 8, even the one that was withdrawn. And we have a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Susan, I would like to add that.
Yes, Tom.
Dominic doesn't just take tours out and do a little bit of fishing too. He ferries contractors to the island and such. To me, he's a vital resource, and I don't think I'm alone. And it would be certainly, I think, a good use of that space. If we had 12 fishermen, like true lobstermen or fishermen year round, or whatever the season is applying, then I think that this would be a more valid discussion about who these places should be reserved for. But we don't. And I think we should be encouraging this industry. Anybody who's doing commercial boating applications down there should be encouraged until we have a full fishing fleet.
Thank you, Tom. All
Yeah.
right.
And I would just add that I would like to defer to the Harbor Committee for their work, and they are the Harbor Committee after all. But this sounds like a gray, this particular application has some pluses and minuses, but the Harbor Master has asserted that we have the capacity, so it is a moot issue on this particular application.
All right. I guess we should vote. So we have a motion and a second to approve all 8, including the withdrawn Joya application. All those in favor? And no opposed. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Steve,
Yeah,
for
thank
your
you.
input. So I guess, Dominic, you will resubmit or unwithdraw or
He already,
you already,
Stop by tomorrow morning.
okay. Okay. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate that.
Well, Audra said she would be able to add that to our
Right.
packet. So
Great.
for the record, that will be shown in the
Okay.
packet.
Great. And we will sign these when we're done. All right. Moving right along. Request for a temporary ice ring at the tannery. I believe Peter Lindquist is here to speak to that.
You can't wait
Thank
for
you.
me to speak.
You're right.
I can't wait. This
I
is
can't
great.
wait. We're excited.
Just wait till you read it.
Okay. Oh, we should have run it. We should have had more time to
I
read
read
this.
this in the packet.
Okay. I'm going to turn off my microphone.
No, you could
talk
leave it
now.
on.
No,
That's
no, no, I'm
fine.
going to let you speak.
Peter Lindquist, 36 Chestnut Street. I come to you as a committee, not a committee person. I am on committees. I'm on your Knox County Budget Committee. You can hold your applause. I'm on your, I'm a member of a Rotary Club with Susan Dorr here. But I'm coming to you as a person interested in supporting both our library and our outdoor activities, Ragged Mountain Recreation Area, our town, and anybody that wants to get out and skate. Get outside this winter. I have got a bunch of volunteers together to assemble like we did, or like Phi Home Design did about a decade ago, an assembled bunch of boards and flooded it with water and made an ice rink in front of the library. I'm proposing that we do the same with volunteers down at the Tannery Park. And I've got a list here of people who I've spoken to. I've spoken to Audra. Audra has assured me she spoke to Bill Kelly. I've spoken to the Public Works Director, not directly, but I met with Kendall about safety and some things that could be need to be assembled to make it a parking area for the public. The whole point is the library has a winter fest. This town back in the 30s and 40s had a winter festival. This might be a tiny, tiny effort to get back to skating outdoors in the winter. Yes, we have lots of places that have an ice rink, but this is just it's a short-lived event. I'm looking to get it the weekend at the end of January with the Winterfest that the library is putting on. I've spoken to Chief Farley. He assured me that between the main water that manages our fire hydrants, they can put a hose over from Rawson Avenue from a hydrant and flood the assembled rink that this amazing company called Hay Runner, which is in Rockport, a contracting firm that bought Phi Home Design. I spoke to the owner, Shannon Richards, today, and she's volunteered some volunteers, her employees, and some engineering time. These are people that could put together a rectangular frame that would be square and line it with donated plastic that Tom Hedstrom recommended. I didn't even think about this. He said, when you make an ice rink, you should have white plastic inside of it where you flood so that the sun doesn't melt it. So it's brilliant. It's brilliant. These are the kinds of committee efforts that we take here. Let's see, I've got neighbors on Washington Street and Mill Street, Mount Batty Street, who have volunteered to work as monitors, open and closing volunteers. They would be like the bouncers of your clubs. Jeff Nathan, our snowball manager, and Adam out there are going to help me recruit some young adults to act as chaperones and put in some volunteer time shoveling snow when it's necessary. It's only going to be up for roughly a week, the end of January. If it gets really popular, hopefully we can make that change. I'm here asking for your support, basically. That's it. Do you have any questions for me? Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions or concerns from the group?
Yeah, it's just over 2 weeks from now. Peter, can you pull it off?
So it's funny you mentioned that, Ken. The bottom of my little list, it says the dates that I have to be really important to commit to. And it's basically, today was getting the commitment from Hayrunner to the volunteers, and B, to get basically 3 or 4 days when this thing is assembled, and then get the water in it. So it actually needs roughly the last 2 weeks of January to be rigid and full of water. So it's tight. It's tight. If it doesn't work, or if anything falls through in this whole thing, then it's not going to happen. But we're on track for it to be happening based on your approval tonight.
Where at the tannery were you going to do this?
So I went down there based on Hayrunner's request, and Audra and I talked about this. There's a big flat piece of concrete right next to Rawson Avenue.
Okay, on that side.
On that side, it's about 70 feet by 70 feet
Yep.
square.
So it's not
pretty darn flat.
So it's not the existing parking lot.
It's not the existing parking lot, which is kind of screwed up and broken, and
It's
it
not
would
the
be
field.
not the field. That's even more lumpy.
And what does it look like as far as drainage when it melts
I think it would
from that
drain
location?
pretty much right into the river.
Oh, maybe a storm drain.
Huh?
Well, we'll want to do that thoughtfully though. But
It's just
Well,
water,
it's
though,
water
right?
that
It's
would
just water.
melt. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't really
as
control.
long as it goes right.
As
It's
long
just
as
the
it doesn't go
erosion along
into the, what is the abutter? Have you talked to the
Well,
abutter
now
there?
I'm
Almost there.
I have not spoken to that exact abutter. I've spoken to others in the area, but to
I
get,
just want to make sure they're not downhill from.
and I will let you know tomorrow.
So it's that sort of panhandle that's in the back of the houses on Washington Street.
That is correct.
Yeah. It's a great spot for it.
Well, it's not perfect. Allison, what?
Yeah.
First of all, thank you. I enjoyed your presentation also.
That's-
And now the dates that you can commit to, are you also willing to commit to facilitating the disassembly?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, yeah, yes,
And-
yes. And
I
that,
figured.
and Hayrunner will help me with that too. I'm not going to set the thing up, and I'm not going to take it apart.
Mhm.
but
And the
it
understand,
will-
you're probably going to do it only during the day because there's no lights there, right?
Right. We've already crossed it will be a daytime, low-tech activity.
All right.
Noon to 4.
Benches,
Zero.
0.
I mean, and maybe if it goes really well, we could find ways to expand it or.
It would be great if this was just a first-time success so that next year, when this comes around, it actually is part of a winter festival.
Well,
That's
if it stays cold long enough
right.
to keep it.
People are going to start demanding it.
I
Brilliant.
think you've
if
got
it were
other
ready.
things to talk about, but do I have your support?
I would move that we give Peter our full support for the ice skating rink at Tannery Park with gratitude.
Sure, I'll second that.
It's in your note, it says about Bill Kelly reviewed the project and will submit requirements. Has he submitted those requirements?
I mean, the way that he kind of looked at it, it's like any other recreational facility on any other piece of town property. So the only thing that we, really need to do, get approval from all of you. Peter talked about duration, it's
I've
gonna
got
be-
rules.
There'll be some simple rules about the use. And then we'll speak with our insurance carrier about some sort of rider for the duration of it being there. So it's all very, very simple, like any other, amenity that we'd have at a park for recreational purposes.
So people won't need to sign waivers?
Nope, no
No,
waivers
None of that
required.
like that?
And,
No.
and there'll be a banner
It's
that will
hard.
basically say the words rules curfew. There'll be an open and closing time, and there'll be rules.
Okay.
And there'll be a big, this Hayrunner wants a big promo banner. I was like, well, that's fine.
I'm sorry,
That's
who's-
fine.
Who's Hayrunner?
we'll get into that later. It doesn't.
No. My question is, who's
They're a
Sabre?
general contractor.
Okay.
They bought Phi Home Design. They're a wonderful community group.
Yeah.
I walked in and asked for this and they were like, yeah, this sounds
So
good.
they're donating the materials.
And the time.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And and the banner, do we have to
I'm-
approve
I'm-
we should maybe say, we're also approving a banner tonight. I know we have some rules about that sometimes,
Well, go for it. I don't-
but is that helpful to just? I know sometimes we have to approve like every banner that goes up in town. It's very strange.
Municipal purpose, you're fine.
Oh, it's a municipal purpose,
Yeah.
so, great.
Peter, it's a great idea. I appreciate your working on it, bringing it up, making it happen. So the Winterfest is the 25th and it's carefully scheduled so that Winterfest is one weekend and the Toboggan Nationals are the following weekend. So the more events we can fill in between those two and make this a winter destination for a week long, the better off we are. So thanks. If you can leave that thing frozen for a full week.
Let's just get it started. Let's
Yeah,
just get it
right.
filled up.
Are there any issues as far as, I don't know, do we normally plow the tarred part of the parking lot? Do we normally plow it if we get snow between now and then?
We certainly can.
Wouldn't that would be supportive of?
That would probably be another, a revisit to my friend, Mr. Dave St. Laurent.
Right, that's why I was asking the question.
I got up there early. Yes, there's still some other folks that I do need to touch base with.
I think they can work out those details as they,
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
They
I
come
think
up.
you've
I don't think
got
we
other
normally-
things to talk about
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
I could just.
they
All
don't-
right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Yay,
Okay.
500. Thank you
Okay,
so
thank you.
much, Peter. We
Appreciate it.
appreciate your effort. Okay. All right, and the third action item is scheduling a public hearing to determine if 39 Main Street is a dangerous building. We have Jeremy to speak to that.
Hello, thank you. I wish I could have provided more information into your packet, but unfortunately, all that has to play out in the hearing. So I'll just give a little bit background. 39 Main Street, the former surroundings building, has been vacant for many years now. The code office issued a notice of violation back in October. And I brought you up to speed on that. We've had no response on that notice of violation. And as I told you back then, we were going to move kind of in two paths, one being a dangerous building hearing process. And that's what's moving forward. We did retain the services of an engineering firm to assess the building. I'll leave it at that and leave it for the hearing because that's really where this needs to play out. We don't have the other parties not here. So what I need you to do is to schedule a hearing and a notice of a hearing be issued for the hearing dated February 18th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in the town office. I have that written down if someone would like to read it so it's clear. Sometimes these can get pretty litigious, as you can imagine. That's not our intent to be that way. I will also say that I have met yesterday with a potential buyer of the property, and they're well aware of what's going on, what the process is moving forward. So leave it at that, and that can maybe come into play in the hearing at that time.
So in the matter of a potential dangerous building at 39 Main Street, I hereby move that a notice of hearing be issued and the matter be scheduled for hearing on February 18th, 2025 at 6:30 PM in the town office.
Thank
Second.
you.
Second, any discussion?
Yeah, I'm curious about how we're treating the potential new buyer. Will they have the option of convincing us at the hearing that they are going to see it through and do things right, and
Well,
therefore we
I'm gonna-
withdraw the,
So as far as I'm concerned, and I don't want to get into too much detail, a dangerous building is a dangerous building regardless of who owns it or what the status is at that time. I mean, if someone is proposing to make a great fix and something that works, that's fantastic, but will remain, in my opinion, it's an unsafe, going under the notice of violation that we issued prior, the unsafe structure and unsafe equipment, not touching on the dangerous building piece, even though they might be the same. it remains a dangerous building and an unsafe structure until it's fixed, if you understand my point. Does that clarify?
Right. So I guess part of the purpose then of that hearing is to describe what the building is like. Does that take into
Correct.
any-
So I will say what will happen in that hearing is that I will testify, Clint Beveridge, the code officer, will testify, and our engineers will testify.
Okay.
You guys are kind of a adjudicating board, if you will, and you have to take our testimony and any testimony and from the other side.
Right. And if a potential buyer says, hey, I got the place at a reasonable amount, I can make the fixes that the engineers say by X date, is that what we do?
Sure, that's going to come up on how we're going to mitigate and remediate the dangerous building. That will come after. If you guys find it as a dangerous building, you do. And then they're going to be directed, the owner, future owner, mortgage holder, everyone that's in place that has interest in it is going to be required to take certain actions by a certain time.
Okay.
Because from my perspective, there's an imminent threat and a kind of a long-term threat. So we need to shore the building up, at least temporarily. That all has to play out. My hope is that it will happen, but we've got to move through this process.
Okay.
So my question would be about the timing that if we have the hearing and we sign off on the dangerous building, that triggers a timeline, I'm sure. So what, I mean, it throws an oddball into the mix that we have a potential new buyer with potential new resources, and I don't want to tie their hands by throwing a
You won't throw
deadline.
any wrench in their plan by finding it is a dangerous building if you so do. They understand that the building needs immediate attention.
So what is their time constriction? If we pull the trigger on the 18th, what follows from there?
We will, myself and the town attorney will negotiate with the parties that have interest in the property to resolve the dangerous building.
Oh, so basically reasonable time.
Correct.
Okay.
Understanding that a reasonable time from our perspective has commenced back October when we issued the first notice of violation and 2 years ago when we issued a first notice to them. So
We want to be faster than that.
we want to be faster. We need to be faster than that.
Allison?
Is this one of those instances where the select board is acting in a more judicial
Yes.
capacity?
Yes.
So I think it would be helpful for somebody to explain that to us at some point very soon, because unlike many of the other matters, I've been scolded in the past and learned this, that unlike many of the matters that come to us where we can all kind of, talk about who's affected and, you can enter into the conversation, anything.
Yeah.
This is a very clearly defined
Specific, yeah.
process where I assume we're supposed to make findings of fact.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so our purpose is going to be evaluating whether or not it's a dangerous building based on some criteria that
Yep.
we establish, and that there's a lot of danger actually in going outside of.
Correct.
There are things that we're supposed to consider and things that we're not supposed to consider. And I assume
Correct.
that one of the things we're not supposed to consider is how does this affect who
Right.
owns it and what is that? We'll be making a finding of fact about a pure point in time based on criteria that have been evaluated. right?
Correct.
So
And
would
the
it be
dangerous building, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Would it be appropriate for us to have, prior to that date, could we have a Zoom call with Bill Kelly perhaps to do the
Bill-
guidelines?
So Bill
of-
Kelly can brief you on it prior to, but he'll also be
He will be
present
here.
at the meet. And that's one reason for the February 18th date, because that was the first one we could get everybody who really needed to be there together in the same room. So he'll go over all of the procedural stuff and the requirements of the select board as a
Okay.
quasi judiciary body.
And
for
you'll
that
get a
hearing.
copy of it. I will say there's something that you folks have to sign that will be with Katrina in the town office. I don't know if it's ready yet, but it'll be there. That lays out pretty much, it has the dangerous building statute in it. I mean, it lays it kind of out for you there, but we'll be here and Bill will be here. I really won't be able to speak to some of the questions Bill will be speaking to because I'm providing testimony in that process. So we'll let Bill handle that side.
Yeah, so Bill walks you through the process side of it. Jeremy's the substance and testifying. And that'll be the distinction between the two of them on that day.
We'll try to keep the agenda light on other items. Okay. So we
Yeah,
have.
I don't suspect it'll be too lengthy on this one, to be
Right,
honest with you, with
right.
the evidence that we have.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second discussion. Are we ready to vote on setting this hearing for the February 18th?
Yeah, I still have the reservations about making a hasty decision. I know, Jeremy, you've been at it for a long time, but I don't want to tie the hands of a possible solution here. I don't want to drive these people away from possibly saving.
I've met with
business.
this interested party at least twice,
Mhm.
talked to them in great detail about what they need to submit, what it's going to take. Access to the site is challenging. So I've talked to them at least twice. They are well aware of what the building needs and this process that's moving forward. That's all I can say.
I think it is just completely inappropriate for us to be talking about the potential buyer. This conversation is leaving me wondering if there's a conflict of interest or if, because our job is to exclusively act in the best interest of the community. And I've never had it happen where the code enforcement officer and the people who are in charge of evaluating whether something is dangerous are coming to us and asking us to evaluate a threat. And that should be our primary concern are those facts and, the threat to the community, not.
Yeah. And Ken, I appreciate what you're saying. The reality, again, I just go back to the fact, no matter who owns it, it's a dangerous building until it's not a dangerous building, or it's an unsafe structure until it's not an unsafe structure. It doesn't matter, again, who owns it. It is the building is what it is. We want it to be resolved. We want it to be fixed, remediated, and, a lively building again. We want that.
I appreciate you saying that because that's where I would lean is we want it to be remediated. We want a solution. We don't want the town to tear it down.
I'm not even contemplating that. We have a dangerous building or an unsafe structure that you guys need to weigh in on whether it is a dangerous building. And that will guide what happens moving forward. Until we have that, it's kind of hard for us to move forward.
And really any potential remediation or fix gets more detail through the hearing, I suspect, because of the engineering report on the status of the building.
Yeah, so there is a report that's been prepared and you'll be provided with. There is not a report on what someone needs to do to fix it.
Oh,
That's
really?
That's separate. That's
Not our
not up
job.
to us to do.
Job.
That is for someone else to do, and that will be required. And the new owner or the proposed new owner knows that they need to go through that process and hire engineers and people to get this done ASAP.
Good.
Okay, any further discussion? Tom, anything you'd like to add? We ready to vote? All those in favor, February 18th at 6:30 PM?
Yeah, well, not.
Okay. 500. Thank you. We will look forward to that.
Thank you. I
That'll
appreciate
be-
it.
So, and
I know
just
it's a
to-
sensitive issue, but
Yeah,
And Jeremy brought this up, but because of the nature of this statutorily, all of you need to come in and sign the notice in front of Katrina. Tom, we can send you DocuSign that Katrina can
Is Tom
verify.
not here in town? I don't know.
what's that?
Why can't he
he's
come
there.
in?
Oh, are you in town, Tom? I think that was the question.
I am not.
Okay, there's the answer.
Oh, yeah.
I would also just mention that some of the on why we're asking you now for February 18th, and yes, Audra was talking about Bill's availability and everyone's availability. We also have a requirement to serve. Not only are we sending them email copies of this document, of this hearing, we also have to have them served. So we're going to be serving, and that means by sheriff service. So we'll be serving the current mortgage holder who lives in Lincolnville, and we'll be serving the current owners who are not in Maine currently. They're in Florida. So we have to work with a sheriff's department in Florida to serve them in Florida. So is what it is.
That's just notice of the decision, basically.
Notice of the hearing.
Notice of the
So,
hearing.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Jeremy,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the 18th is a regular
It's
select
our
board
second meeting of the,
meeting night.
Yeah.
And so we
February.
will,
That's where we'll
Potentially.
both be celebrating our win at the toboggan races over the summer rock.
Oh,
right.
oh,
And
is that happening? Are we doing
I
that?
forgot about
I
that.
suspect we will.
to start preparing.
I didn't hear that as part of Audra's report. She
It
talked
wasn't,
to
I'm
us to
sorry.
talk quieter during that time, but I suspect it's probably out there.
Team, are you going to be team captain?
It sounds
We got to start
like that-
organizing.
Yeah, it has to
Oh,
get voted
dear.
in. for that.
Sometimes we've been a little disorganized in the past, and I think we can do better.
It
I'll be
worked
the-
out really well last time.
I'll be the cheerleader on
I
the
don't know,
side.
sorry. Did I do it last time?
Okay,
I did.
discussion items. Draft paid parking program parameters. What you've all been waiting for.
Some are waiting for the
Here we
pesticide piece.
go. Yes, this is true.
All right, so before we get into the actual program, I've had a few people ask me about sort of some of the underlying, policy issues that this is going to address, because there's a lot more to it than just the parking itself. There's a lot of other things that parking has an impact on in terms of best use and best practice land use and environmental and housing policy, and a lot of different initiatives that the town has been interested in moving forward with. And believe it or not, parking is a major hindrance to a lot of these. So I prepared this memo to try to talk about some of the overlooked economic, social, and environmental consequences and costs to towns like Camden of providing free parking. So there's a lot of opportunities that we have by introducing paid parking to address some of these really intractable problems that we've faced as a community. So just to give you a little background, this has really been an issue that the town of Camden has been struggling with since at least the 1930s. So I've looked through and I've been given correspondence between town officials and Mary Louise Curtis Bach when they were talking about cleaning up the public landing and the town resuming ownership of it. So there was a major fire in 1935, and the debris, that just piles of ramshackle buildings, needed to be cleaned up. And the idea was that Mary Louise Curtis Bach would pay for this, and then the town in turn would buy this property and implement her vision for the public landing. So it was an Olmsted Brothers design as well, and it was basically a waterfront park that included a multi-use municipal building. However, when it came time for the town to make good on their part of all of this, so she cleaned up the buildings, the town took over ownership of the public landing, but the town refused to move forward with implementing the plan that the Olmsted Brothers had designed for that space, on the grounds that parking space, which is sorely needed to relieve paucity of such space on Main Street and Bayview Street, was a priority over more park development. And since 1935, and I'm sure it was before that, Camden has struggled with the challenge of how to provide enough parking for the summer months when our population quadruples. So the idea of paid parking has been revisited at least half a dozen times since the 1950s. And I'm sure it's been more than that, but that was just what I could find in an index that the assistant town manager keeps of every single time parking was discussed. So it's been discussed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. At least paid parking has come up half a dozen times since the 1950s. So instead of moving forward with paid parking, the method that Camden and almost every single other community in the country turned to for solving their parking supply and demand challenges was just to continue to increase their supply of free parking. So that included parking minimums for businesses and also residential developments. So the idea was to just continue to add and add and add more parking lots to accommodate increasing numbers of residents, employees, and tourists that are coming to Camden by car. And when you keep on adding parking, you keep on adding parking lots, surface lots, and your land gets consumed with surface parking lots. And there's a lot of problems with that. So we're prioritizing car storage and sacrificing walkable neighborhoods. We're sacrificing the ability to, instead of building a parking lot, build affordable housing close to your downtown core where you can develop more denser housing. And also any sort of opportunity to fund a public transit system that could offset, the need for so much individual car transit. And, that's been a real disservice to both, residents who could use this as well as visitors. So we really locked into everybody having their own private means of transportation and expanding the supply of parking. But still, it feels like you never have enough because there's still fierce competition for the prime parking, which is in Main Street, Bayview Street, Elm Street, Mechanic, like right in the downtown core. So our commitment to providing free parking over the years has had many hidden economic, social, and environmental consequences. So some of the environmental consequences: free parking incentivizes and encourages driving. That leads to higher vehicle emissions, air pollutions, and other contributions to climate change. And these large surface lots, it's a lot of impermeable surface. It is a lot of stormwater runoff. And everybody in Camden knows stormwater, and managing stormwater is one of our biggest challenges. It's also creating these heat islands. And I know for, Maine and small communities, that's not always a concern that, is important to us as large cities where it's a real problem. But still, even in a smaller community, having all of that impermeable surface reflecting heat is a problem. We have poor land use outcomes. So towns like Camden, we did require excessive minimum parkings in our zoning code. So we have a surplus of parking spaces. We have all the Camden parking company lots. We have churches with large lots. There's a lot of private lots that are underutilized. We have about, I think I counted 13 acres of parking in our downtown core. 13 acres. Can you imagine what we could do with 13 acres of space for things like housing development and other, desirable amenities to the community? So it's very inefficient use of land and a lot of opportunities for more valuable developments that would also bring in more property tax and could, offer opportunities for infill development right in the downtown core have been lost because we've just had to provide more and more parking. Like we said before, poor transportation outcomes. So 1/3 of Camden's summer traffic, and this is the same in all communities with a free parking environment, is caused by people cruising around looking for parking. People looking to park directly where they want to get out of their car and go to. So you have people circling around looking for spaces. So that's a lot of traffic. Imagine 1/3 of Camden's summer traffic just disappearing because all of a sudden you can more efficiently manage your parking. That's a huge outcome it's a hugely positive outcome for the town of Camden. By subsidizing parking, we've distorted transportation choices. So we've really prioritized parking, road infrastructure, vehicles. We have underinvested in pedestrian infrastructure for cyclists, the opportunity to have any sort of public transit like we were talking about before. So this makes our town less accessible for those who rely on any form of alternative form of transportation. So we have a lot of economic inefficiency too. So free parking is not free for anyone. So the cost of it is always going to be embedded in higher prices for goods and services as well as housing because we've required it in the past. It has to be paid for somehow. So it's paid for by having to charge more, the businesses having to charge more, and the towns having to pass this cost on to property taxpayers. And it's the same thing with the state because it's their infrastructure as well. And also, like we said before, land allocated for parking could be used for more economically productive purposes. So when we look at solutions, it's not just implementation of paid parking, where we've been working to correct the issue with a glut of parking and the issues that have been caused by the free parking environment, and also mandated parking minimums. So over the years, the town's invested in public parking, which is important because municipalities and public parking is much better shared than private lots, which are typically not shared very well. You can see this in the parking study where The municipal lots, especially the ones in the downtown, have, really high levels of occupancy and use, whereas the in-town lots, the private ones that might even be more conveniently located, are not well utilized at all. Camden Parking Company, that's a really good example of a private lot that's very highly or underutilized. So recently, the town purchased the public safety parking lot or public safety, the land that became that lot. Recently in 2018, the town purchased the Knox Mill parking lot. That was previously a private lot that was very underutilized, and it added 100 parking spaces less than a quarter of a mile from the downtown. In 2021, voters approved changes to the town's zoning code, and it removed the requirement for parking minimums in the downtown district. And this was after, the pandemic, and there were a lot of different businesses coming into town, and they experienced the issue and the absurdity of having parking minimums. We had all these new businesses coming in that were required to demonstrate that they could provide a certain amount of parking spaces. So really what they ended up doing was, it was the same spaces over and over again that they were leasing from the same people to try and show that they had enough parking to accommodate everyone, when really it wasn't necessary for them to do that. And there are many other communities that have no parking minimums in their downtown, where there's a plentiful supply of both public parking and commercial parking. So, I think that was a really important decision that the voters made, and it went a long way in sort of correcting this issue that we've been dealing with for years. So the final part of this, however, in order to make the most of these investments, whether it be the public lots that we've purchased and are using, or the time and energy that everybody spent into really looking at our zoning code and amending it to address these issues, is the implementation of paid parking, because that is how you best balance your parking supply with your parking demand, because you're always going to have that tendency for people to want to park in the prime spaces as close to where they're going. It's just human nature. So implementing paid parking and reinvesting the revenue collected from parking fees in Camden has the opportunity to make a lot of meaningful progress on things like reducing traffic impacts. So we talked before about how, 1/3 of our summer traffic is excessive driving, people circling to find a parking space. A lot of that is because there's really poor parking turnover. We have about 90+% occupancy on Main Street from the parking surveys that were done. That incentivizes the circling, driving, looking for a spot. You want something around 80% occupancy, and that is achieved with paid parking because it incentivizes people to park for the time that they've paid for, do whatever it is that they need to do at a business or a restaurant, and then, move their car and either go somewhere else in town or go to their next destination. So this is going to reduce congestion, air pollution, noise levels, especially during the peak tourist seasons. It makes it much more efficient. We have a problem now with, people who kind of shuffle from space to space. So they see when parking enforcement is coming around. They are parked in a space for 2 hours, and then they'll just move their car a few spaces down the street. This will take care of that problem. And, it's just a much better way to manage the system as opposed to off the back of parking tickets, which is what we currently do. So it's a much friendlier way for people to experience the town and get the amenity they need than getting a parking ticket where they're instead paying for a violation. So it also supports environmental preservation. So we're protecting our natural areas by being able to reinvest some of the revenue that we potentially would get from paid parking to maintain things like trails that are adjacent to some of the downtown areas, or build new trails. And also we can decrease sprawl because we're not constantly going to be needing to add to the parking supply. We're better able to match supply with demand and not increase the supply that we have to constantly feed the desire for more and more parking. We can use the revenue that we collect to fund more sustainable infrastructure. So things like pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure. And that's going to really enhance the visitor experience, also enhance the ability of residents to not be so dependent on cars. I know there are a lot of people in town who desire better pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure. it's very expensive to fund because we have old, narrow streets and we've got a lot of complicated issues that we need to solve. So something as simple as putting in a sidewalk or putting in a bike lane is very complicated, very expensive. This provides a really good solution for funding some of the development of that infrastructure. And we've heard a lot of talk about the introduction of a transit system in Mid-Coast Maine. And that's been talked about over the years. It's been planned. And the one thing that has stopped it is always a lack of a funding mechanism. It's been a major barrier in all of the communities. And this is a real opportunity to potentially invest in that. We're also going to free up land for housing development. So we have a lot of lots that are very poorly designed for parking, and they don't really work very well for parking. We've got one across the street that's a perfect example. That's something that would be much better utilized as infill higher density housing. And when you don't have that real kind of fear that every spot is sacred, we can't lose any spaces, it frees up lots that really aren't functioning very well for parking purposes to be used for other things. It's going to encourage local business growth. So promoting centralized parking and paid parking encourages visitors to park once and explore the town on foot. And this really benefits local businesses. So instead of everybody driving around everywhere, they're more incentivized to walk around town more than moving their car and trying to find a space that's right in front of where they want to go. And the dynamic pricing for peak seasons based on demand during heavy tourist periods ensures more fair access and reduces the strain on local infrastructure. Also, when you look at our natural resources, if we don't have so many large surface lots, if we're able to do other things with them, it's going to help with some of our stormwater management issues. And also, like we talked about before, mitigation of heat islands. So I just wanted to, I think it was really important to lead in with this because I think it hasn't been laid out in terms of all of the different policy opportunities that we have here. And the fact that this is a final step in a long process that the town of Camden has undergone to really implement some best land use practices and correct some of our past policies that were very well intentioned, but exacerbated many of our more complicated and intractable economic, social, environmental, and financial issues, which is common amongst most American communities. It's true of large cities, it's true of small towns that are popular tourist destinations. So it's not just large cities that are looking at this, small towns need to look at this too, because this has impacted all of us for years. So that's kind of the backdrop to most of this. If anybody's more interested in kind of doing a deeper dive, there's some really good literature about this. I'd recommend The High Cost of Paid Parking by Donald Shoup.
There's free parking.
Oh, High Cost of Free Parking by Donald Shoup, or Paved Paradise by a man named Henry Grobar that just came out last year. So it's got really good research on all of this that shows that this is not just a Camden problem. This is really an American problem in towns and cities. So to go from that into the actual program itself. So we had a working group that consisted of a number of participants. We had Colin Page, who owns Page Gallery, Christy Kilfoyle, who is the new executive director at the library, Russell O'Brien, who's the facilities director at the library, Todd Anderson, the owner of French and Braun, Tyler Smith, who is the owner of Bayview Collective and a number of other businesses in town, Aaron Bailey, who is our detective but will be managing the parking program, Adrian Shorey, he's the parking enforcement officer, Spencer Tooley, the former parking enforcement officer, our public works director, Eric Anderson, who was there on behalf of the Camden Area Business Group, John Burke, our consultant, Stuart Smith, also from Bayview Collective, John McCluskey, a business owner, Susan Dorr was involved, Holly Anderson was a town staff person, Jody Hansen, our finance director, and myself participated in some of these workshops. So the program, the group determined that the duration of the paid parking period should be May 15th to October 15th. So that incorporates Memorial Day as well as Indigenous Peoples Day holiday weekends. The hours of the program would be 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. 7 days per week, including holidays, except Sundays when it should be noon to 5 p.m. to accommodate morning churchgoers. So the map that we have hard copies of here, but there's also, I believe, a copy in the packet, The idea was to scale back the paid parking area. Originally, it was going to be a bit more expansive, and there were going to be about 40 parking kiosks. Now they're going to be about 29, I believe. So it's a smaller area focused around the downtown core. And the idea is it'd be a phased approach. So kind of starting with a smaller area in the central downtown, and then over time, the paid area could expand. And this will allow us to collect data and statistics and have a better idea of what the impacts are, especially on adjacent areas that aren't going to be included in the first round of this. So the time limits for 2 hours for the on-street and in the small Mechanic Street and Washington Street lots, 4 hours max time limit on the public landing, which is the same as now. So, initially it's a 2 hour limit, and then people can pay more for additional time. So the group wanted to ensure the turnover of the spaces at the public landing due to the location of the public restrooms and a strong desire to provide public access to the waterfront. They also recommended keeping the upper public safety lot open for all-day parking, at least at the outset. And I think what's important to all of this is the initial parameters for the program, but it's really important that based on the data that we collect, based on feedback that we collect, it's flexible and can change. So it shouldn't be something that's sort of locked in and then it's really difficult to change. We need some flexibility for this to be successful. It may also be necessary if the Knox Mill does not have enough parking spaces for downtown businesses, owners, employees to park in all day. They were thinking that the upper public safety lot would take some of the pressure off that. Short duration parking spaces. So the group worked to reallocate and relocate some motorcycle, expand some 15-minute parking spaces to ensure that there's ample opportunities and strategic locations for quick drop-offs and pickups. And this is something I looked into. Chris Nolan talked about Old Orchard Beach getting rid of paid parking. They actually didn't get rid of paid parking, but they put in several short duration spaces on different blocks so that restaurants and other businesses who might need to do quick loading and unloading, or people who might want to come in and just quickly pick something up at a business, are able to. And the group went through and really thoughtfully found, locations on each kind of, for lack of a better term, block where they could expand to have more 15-minute spaces. So there was an opportunity for people who just want to run in really quickly to be able to do that easily. So that'll be good for both, residents and visitors. So they talked about the metered parking rate being $2 per hour, or $2 per hour, and people can pay by both kiosk and text to pay. And it will allow for credit card, debit card payments, but not coin or cash payments. And it was found that looking at other communities that implemented paid parking, about 98% of transactions were with credit cards or done over people's mobile devices. So really cash payments are not, it's something that's going to be a lot more difficult for not a lot of gain. And we've talked about other ways that people who might only carry cash would be able to participate and not be put out. But the idea is not to accept cash. Employee business owners permits were not recommended by the group at this time because the paid area is so small, and the areas where there's going to continue to be free parking are so large in scope. It was felt that at this time, it's not necessary to have any sort of permit program, but that might be something that we need to consider in the future. So Camden resident parking discounts. So the idea is that Camden residents will receive 2 hours of free parking per day. Resident parking will be tied to car registration. So residents registering their cars in Camden are eligible for 2 hours of free parking. So expired metered and overtime parking citation fine. The group felt that the current amounts were adequate, but they would like the time allowed to pay fines before accruing any additional fees should be extended to 14 days. So the way that it works currently, the first overtime parking offense is $20, the second offense is $40, and if the fine is not paid within 14 days, the fines will double. So that's the summary of the program. Oh, so the public landing is different than on-street. That would be $30 violation for unpaid or expired meter. And let me see on page 40 of your packet, you can see the map that we also have hard copies of on the table there. And that shows the area where the paid program would be implemented. So it's the area in red, and then the green sort of crosses are the proposed locations of kiosks. The yellow area is the 2-hour parking 2-hour parking areas, and then the blue is free all day. So does anybody have any questions?
I've got a list of questions based on what you presented. First, am I right in thinking that you're saying you're using that the idea that Camden is going to be installing heat islands, which is roofing over parking spots? That's a town priority that we're going to do. You mentioned heat islands.
Heat island is what happens when you have a large expanse of asphalt.
Okay. So which pieces of asphalt are you going to not make it asphalt anymore as a part of the parking? Where is that on the map? Which asphalt are you removing?
We aren't yet.
So which asphalt are you saying is a selling point in doing this to go ahead and remove? Because that was one of the selling points that you used in going over this. And this is a selling point thing. So I'm wondering about the individual selling points. And I have questions about other ones in this.
Well, I would recommend that there are a number of areas that are currently parking spaces that, or parking lots that, some of them are privately owned, some of them are publicly owned. There are privately owned lots that people who own them are looking at them and are saying, this is not very economically viable for this to be just parking anymore. And they're thinking of developing them. And we've had conversations with some of those people. We've got a lot across the street that's a perfect example of one that could be developed for something that would be it would be a highest and best use to have it not be parking, to have it be housing, to have it be something, it's municipal purpose. It could be a commercial purpose, but parking is probably the lowest possible utilization of that lot.
Yeah, you mentioned there are 13 acres that are privately owned.
No total parking.
That's correct. Okay, so the 13 acres, or what is the acreage then that you're talking about, where you've talked to the privately owned lots and they're happy to not have them anymore and turn them into green space or a building?
The ones, so there's one down at the end of, at this, where the stop sign is down here.
One.
So there's a property owner there. If you go beyond that stop sign, there's another property owner that's talked about how they don't need, and I really think it's probably not right for me to talk about plans that people have come in.
But you brought it up because it's
Sure,
part
yeah.
of your report to say, I don't want to make it seem like all private parking lot owners are communicated to and happy about this, when maybe there are private property parking lot owners who are concerned that they're going to get an influx of people trying to park in their parking lot because they don't want to pay. I just want to make sure that it's understood that not all private, or maybe it is the case, whichever it is, I think should just be known. It was brought up in your report, so I imagine you've got a basis of understanding of what that percentage is.
So this is if you read the
Is that-
downtown master plan,
My question is to Audra, who put these selling points about the parking program. And so since she brought these up, I'm trying to find out the
Part of a
details
larger-
behind
Yeah.
it.
Well, we're not really going to know until this is implemented, because we're changing the economic incentive for providing or expanding and providing exponentially more parking. So, it's something that is going to become more valuable once we've actually put a price on it. And so those surface lots that currently have been undeveloped, some of it is going to be a decision of private property owners. And so, I can just tell you about anecdotal conversations we've had with several of them throughout town who are looking at it now and thinking, this isn't necessary, I don't really need it, and it could be put to a more productive use.
You also mentioned that it is 90% utilization. I just want to make sure that as you clarified something that I had said earlier by name, I just want to make sure that we're clear on the 90% utilization fact, which was, I believe that was one time slot out of 6 during a day when there was actually 90% on that report. It was one time slot between something like 11 to 1 in the report where 90% utilization was the thing on the consultant's report. Hours outside of that particular range, it is less than 90%. And so I just want to make sure it's clear that it isn't 90% all the time. It was only during a
Yeah.
time slot around the noon hour, basically.
I would say it's during.
That's what the report
It's during,
said.
during business hours, and if you look at the heat maps, it changes throughout the day.
I think I would just like to interject at this point. We have already adjudicated this and voted in favor of moving forward with a paid parking plan. So what we're looking at is the actual implementation and the guidelines, the philosophy behind it, the studies behind it. These are pieces that have been rehashed, and I think that Audra's purpose is deepening the background and giving us sort of a community philosophy about how we're going forward with this. But what we're charged with right now is looking at the map that's been developed and approving and going forward with this level of implementation, which we voted on several meetings ago.
The point that I was bringing up was only in those points that were brought up already by the town manager in the report to find out what the numbers and the facts are behind that. Had those things not been brought up, I probably wouldn't ask the question. But because this is something that, yes, I understand it. I actually wrote in my notes, why are we going through the selling points about paid parking when that really wasn't the agenda item on here? Why are we going through each individual thing since it already had been voted on? I wasn't sure why that was going on either. Because there are other things that were just brought up, but I just want to make sure we're clear. Again, I was called out by name because I had something a little bit wrong about Old Orchard. So I figured, okay.
Well, it wasn't that. I looked into it and they had a good idea that we were able to utilize for our own program.
Yeah, I think that was great to go ahead and make sure that there's more spaces available that people can use. I have 2 questions about how a couple things kind of work. How does it, I understand one of the elements in here is saying if you are in the town of Camden, you live in the town of Camden, you pay taxes in the town of Camden, that you get 2 hours of paid parking a day. I'm wondering how that works. For example, if I drive downtown, I grab a breakfast sandwich at French and Braun on my motorcycle. I'm there for 30 minutes. I go home, I come back in the Toyota after my run to the dump and I'm getting coffee at Zoot's and I'm there for 30 minutes. Is it, do I have an hour left?
So it's going to be tied to your license plate, your registration. So, people who are registering multiple vehicles
So
Get an unfair advantage.
get an unfair advantage. It's just, we got to figure out some way of doing it, and that's the best way that we could
Why is that
figure
an
it out.
unfair advantage if you have multiple vehicles? That was my
So
question.
you get 2
If I
hours
use
on
it
your
for 30 minutes
motorcycle, 2 hours on your Toyota.
Each registration gets 2 hours. Oh, that's not what it said. It said people get 2 hours, residents get 2 hours. So it's actually people's cars get 2 hours apiece, or
Yeah,
vehicles.
because that's really
registered
the
vehicles.
best way that we can do it
Okay.
without having people interact with the kiosks.
So when I come and get my breakfast sandwich at French and Braun, do I have to fill out on a meter or something that I'm there? Or do I just park my car like I do today, grab my sandwich and coffee?
Just park your car.
Just park your car. That's nice. That's a good thing.
It doesn't start until 10 too.
Right. Well, I got to get up. I got to make sure I get up early.
This
Like,
is
Jeremy just
Yeah,
mentioned, it
so if
doesn't
you-
start till
Okay,
10.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Let's not belabor it. We've got a lot to cover still. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I was just kind of looking at the group of people who went ahead and made these recommendations. It looks like, by my count, we had 6 town employees, 4 business owners, a consultant, and 2 people from the library. So I just wonder, is that really a good round base of the community to have 6 town employees who report to the town manager on this town manager project, be part of this committee? Is this and only have 4 business owners? Is that adequate?
I would like to point out that this, the concerns that I've had expressed to me so far after looking at this was that it was a complete gutting of the initial proposal. And I say that sort of gently. The people that are really looking at this in terms of how we can fully maximize revenue are going to say, we just gave away the farm from this. What this group was tasked with was figuring out the details in a way that can be workable, or the most workable for the town. And this is a very, very significant scaling back. I'm not sure, I personally don't feel that I need 2 hours of free parking. I think that people like me are contributing to the problem when oftentimes I live right up there. If I plan ahead a little bit and then I can make it down, I can park at the Knox Mill, which is even just a little bit closer for free. But many times I'm choosing, because of the ease, I'm choosing to come down and park right here, and it's taking up space from somebody else. So to me, I think it's a benefit to charge people like me, but because it will just slightly shift our thinking. However, I'm prepared to support what this group did, which was to basically try to say, okay, everybody who's a Camden resident, we want to make sure that you're really getting something out of this. And I mean, there are a lot of things that are scaled back. This whole entire area, and just, that 2 hours for Camden residents, that's going to diminish some of the potential revenue benefits, which I'm hearing from people that they are frantic about increased taxes. And we have not come up with other good revenue generating opportunities. So I think overall what this is a really significant scaling back. This isn't a task force or group that was put together to come up with the whole vision. A lot of that was done with the downtown master plan, which started long before I was here, which kind of gets into the whole philosophy of incentivizing parking choices. But what this group did was really scaled things back, not ratcheted things up.
Yeah, and I appreciate where they went ahead and the 2 hour evidently per resident's vehicle. That's kind of a cool thing. But I was really wondering, if we didn't have that time, how much am I really going to save on my overall tax, because paying for parking is a tax. If I have to pay for parking every day compared to what would have been the incremental tax bill without that. I've not seen the numbers, but I have a feeling that actually if we didn't do this, if we hadn't done this, then I'm going to be paying more overall in taxes by combining my real estate taxes and my paid parking taxes. I bet together we pay more, is my system.
It sounds like you're a very heavy downtown parker. So there are residents who almost never park downtown.
Excuse me, I wasn't done yet. I remember that it was brought up earlier that, the dump goes ahead and it's pay as you go, and that's worked. And that's because we only have one place to go, one dump. And so you got to go there. We have other places we can do business that we don't have to pay for parking. And I suspect some people will probably go there because they have options. The dump isn't a place that people enjoy going, but they have to do it. And so you got to pay your $3 a bag or whatever it is. And that's just the way it is.
No, it's actually exactly like this because what we have
No,
are
it's
disposal
not.
options that are subsidized and that they're free. So when you go to the dump, you can for free, you can get rid of all of your recycling and all of your organics for free. And so by charging for the trash, we are incentivizing the free option. Here, we are trying to provide free parking, which are the parking lots that the community has invested in. And we're charging for other parking spaces to incentivize people to choose the free option. So it's the same.
Also, I pulled data from all the communities that have implemented this, and there is some of them, their sales revenue increased. Some of them it stayed about the same. Some of them it barely, it might have been like 1 or 2% difference. I'm not saying that paid parking increases revenue for these businesses, but it certainly doesn't hurt it. If you look at this on balance, there's absolutely no evidence from any community that's implemented this that it's hurt their sales revenue for their local businesses.
So looking at the map, the area of free all-day parking is actually greater than what was originally proposed. And the time parameters that have been placed on this, again, it's not about extracting revenue from residents as much as it is about extracting revenue from the huge volume of visitors who come to town during those months of the year. I think for us to be, we as Camden residents who register our cars here, this is really, it's a gift to get the 2 hours, and the enforcement officers will be able to pull that up on their devices to see whose car that is. And it's a benefit that actually we hadn't thought of initially. We were going to limit it even more. So it's quite a bit more generous, but the outer edges here were areas that had also been considered for paid parking, and they are not now. So the options are still considerable for people who want to park for free all day.
There's lots of free parking. We're not taking away free parking. That's just the tiniest bit further.
So
I understand as a select board, we voted 3-2 for this. If a different select board votes 3-2 the other way, what is the capability to remove this? Is it just the cost of removal?
You mean right now or in the future?
Yeah, after June.
It depends if we include any revenue component in the budget, but so voters, depending on what the budget committee does and what we do, I would say, and if we put forward a budget that includes revenue from paid parking and voters approve that, then we're going to be in a pickle if we eliminate that source of revenue. So there are multiple mechanisms for voter
I don't think
review.
would be.
So it depends on what stage we're at in things, I would say.
I'd say that, this is pretty much how it is. And this constant relitigation is really not productive or helpful.
I mean, what I like is that the flexibility about people, this group of people really looked at it hard, and they're really trying to find ways to make people happier and to have it work better. And I fully support having them continue to look at it and look at it again as, we learn more. But the idea is to help people move through town more. I mean, the number of people that say they don't even bother going downtown, both residents and visitors, lots of people say that during the summer. They just don't even bother. My father tells me that he would much rather pay a couple dollars to find a parking spot than not pay anything to not be able to find something. So there are a lot of benefits to freeing up some of these spots.
I just hope we don't free up spots by driving away people who would be going to our businesses.
I think we drive them away now by not having a place for them to park
or walk or safely park their bike or.
So a lot of it is about you're trying to change people's behavior. And so I'm trying to get a handle on what will the experience be like and how are we trying to change their behavior. For instance, Camden residents, because they have registered their car in Camden, will get a free pass, a 2-hour pass. But that requires patrolmen.
Yes.
So we're not losing that expense by going with paid parking. We still will need patrolmen patrolling the 2-hour and the 4-hour.
They're out there all
Yes.
to monitor all of the parking.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that'll probably be more, actually. I mean,
Yes.
probably.
So what is the experience if a Camden person does not need to approach the kiosk if they're only going to be there for 2 hours?
Right.
But someone who does need to go to the kiosk, they use their card and they get a pass, which they can extend infinitely if they have a phone. I don't know how it works.
Yeah. Yep. They can extend their time.
I think some of it still limits the amount of time. It's, what is the maximum on the public landing is
It's
4 hours.
4 hours.
And the other places, is it?
Yeah, and it
2
was really
hours?
important to the group to make sure that the 4 hours was limited because that's really the only place now where we have public bathrooms.
What do you mean the 4 hours was limited?
So
That
they
seems longer.
can't extend beyond the 4 hours.
Oh, so, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Then the 2 hours, can that be extended in an unlimited way?
that's something, if all of you would like to do that, that's something that we can build into the program.
Because currently it says under parking time limits, 2 hours on street and in the small Mechanic Street and Washington Street lots and 4 hours max on the public landing. So presumably you can't extend your time at an on-street space.
I don't think they even talked about that. So that's something, if all of you think it would be a good idea to do, we can build that into the program, that it's after 2 hours, it gets extended. People can pay to extend.
I mean, it's my feeling that we've got the framework of a really excellent experiment and that this season is going to be a really telling about how this works, what kind of data we can gain, what kind of revenue we can gain, whether or not we've got enough or need to have more. And I know that considering your concerns, and I know Barbara reached out to me earlier too about, having this be somewhat scaled back, but I think that we're going to get a lot of information
Yes.
in this season. And, I'm the last person in the world who wants to have this conversation again. I can tell you that with certainty. However, if it works, it's brilliant. If it doesn't, we're going to have to come back and talk about it again. But I think that we've created a situation where there's minimum friction for Camden residents, which was one of my real concerns. People who are not adept at using a cell phone or, paying for things may not be comfortable with that. I think that this is a generous consideration of Camden residents, and maintaining as much free all-day parking as has been done also is a real bonus for employees and people who want to come for the day. So I think that we're going to learn a lot, and it should be, hopefully it'll be a plus and free things up in town during the summer months. I know that some folks have come to speak about this, and I want to give them an opportunity if they would like to. Barbara.
Barbara Lent, Hardnev. First, I want to say I applaud you for taking this on, because clearly people in Camden don't like change, but it's this way overdue. And it's the best solution. If anybody who has questions about this or is against it, they just need to watch some of the John Burke's workshops and presentations that he did, because it was really thorough and very convincing. And it would answer so many questions for people. And the other thing I want to say is, I have a good friend who is manager of a store in Marblehead, Massachusetts, where they also have paid parking that was introduced a few years back. And two different friends who own businesses in Bar Harbor who just introduced it like 2 years ago or something. And all three of them, I talked to them, they all said they were not sure beforehand, but everyone says it's the best thing we ever did. And my friend in Marblehead says our business went up when we had paid parking. And the friends in Bar Harbor who both live in Bar Harbor and work there said its business has been fine. It's been easier to get around, and we're really happy with being a taxpayer, that the revenue that's come in. So if people have questions, there's all the links to John Burke's work is on the website, and just take a few minutes and while you're drinking your coffee and look at it. It answers all their questions. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else?
Yeah, I want to raise a point.
Yes, sir.
One of the selling points the town manager made was the opportunity to increase housing. When you increase housing density, and I speak from having moved here 15 years ago after living for 30 years in Los Angeles, when you increase housing density, you increase the need for parking. And any additional housing near the center of Camden is going to increase the need for parking. Because even if you require for each unit in a building to have a space, if it's rental, most people are going to have more than one car. So I think that's something you got to think about.
Can you ask if he
So may I-
introduced himself?
Peter, what was your last name, Peter?
Imber, I-M-B-E-R.
And are you a resident of Camden?
I wouldn't be on here if I weren't.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. We just had a question from someone else on Zoom. Thank you. Anyone else? Sir. That's an amazing sweater, by the way. Someone made that for you.
Honey, you got that back home?
Okay.
I want to say that I just
Your
have,
name-
my
your
name
name,
is
sir?
Doc Wallace. I live on Elm Street in
Thank you.
Camden. I came here a meeting or so ago, and I talked about a petition, and I was quickly told by the town manager, non-petitionable. A number of people have said, well, Doc, if you're going to carry the load in this, how about a petition to recall board members or recall the town manager? I've lived in 4 beautiful New England towns, same demographic as Camden, pretty much a little higher. None of them have paid parking. They considered it, but didn't put it in. If they were going to put it in, and I say this with an experience of 40 years working in public administration, and about half of that on that side of the dime, if they were going to put it in, they would have put it to the people for a vote. And I think to do something as massive as this in a town as small as this, based on the recommendations of the town manager, and I also will say in 20 years, I have never seen a public body governed so much by its administrative officer than we have in this town. I would say that basically you're going to put it in, and you're going to get some interesting feedback. It'll be more than 1%. It will, more than 1% of people will tell you that this is not good for a business. And I don't know who the business people are on the committee, but I haven't talked to any business people. I've had people call me and say, Doc, speak for me. And I'm going to ask those people to speak for themselves from now on. I'm dropping out of this. But this is, I think, a scam. I think it's very close. We get sniveling like this. This is a person here that would probably say, as I'm sure she would, that this is akin to a congressional matter some years ago where the leading speaker said, we need to pass this first and then find out what's in it. We're going to pass it, and then we're going to see what's in it. It's not good for Camden. It doesn't speak well for, I think, anybody who's considering living in this town or patronizing this town. And I think you have done a real disservice to just doing nothing else but basically listening to the strong petitioning of your town manager. Thank you.
Would anyone else? Steve, please.
Stephen Gold, Grove Street. As you mentioned, apparently this has been adjudicated, and on one level or another seems as if it's going to happen. However, in reviewing tonight's packet, what I'd like to start with is that I basically challenge almost every assumption made in this memorandum. Most of the language in the memorandum sounds like it comes from either consultants or people who sell the kiosks. I don't want to take too much time, but for example, there are arguments against free parking. Well, first of all, our parking isn't completely free. Our parking is timed parking. You're there for more than 2 hours, it's no longer free. You're going to pay a heavier rate than if you paid for $2 per hour. One of the statements is it encourages driving, leading to higher vehicle emissions, air pollutions, and contributing to climate change. Well, we're talking about the tourist season. How did these people get here? Camden encourages driving because people want to come here. The parking situation, whether it's paid or unpaid, doesn't change any pollution level or anything like that. People don't come here by ferry, they don't come by bus, they don't come by train, they come by car. Parking lots exacerbate stormwater issues, including runoff, which harms ecosystems and creates heat islands. True, okay? Whether they're paid or not paid, that's no argument for making paid parking. That might be an argument for pervious parking lots or whatever, but it really has nothing to do with the issue on the table today. Inefficient land use, meaning private lots. Well, you know, we do have some private lots in town, but I could almost guarantee that the churches aren't going to give up their lots. Camden Parking Company is owned by shareholders. If you think every shareholder is going to get together and say, oh yeah, let's sell it, all right? And as far as selling these lots and building housing, they could have done that over the last 20, 30 years. Is making paid parking is not going to say, oh, I think I'll sell my lot, you know, because in fact, for whatever reason they have lots, paid parking is going to exacerbate and in fact should increase the use of their lots. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of private lots being sold off. 1/3 of summer traffic is caused by cruising for parking. You know, I would sort of challenge that. I know that on the waterfront parking lot, you can go down there and circle around and wait for someone to leave or find a space. But I do not believe that tourists are coming into town, driving down Elm Street, driving up Main Street, not finding a place and knowing or deciding, oh, I'm going to take a right on Atlantic Ave, go all the way down there, take a left on C Street, get back into the heavy traffic coming back into town to cruise some more and look for a parking space. You know, they're either going to give up or keep going or go up Washington Street or go way up Route 52. The arguments for paid parking are it will discourage excess driving. Visitors are encouraged to use alternative modes of transport, such as shuttles, bikes, or walking. There aren't any shuttles. As I stated before, there aren't any ferry service or anything like that. People drive here, you know, they're going to drive here, they're going to park. If they're going to be here for more hours, they may move to another parking space if they can find one, but it's not going to reduce vehicle use. It decreases sprawl. Charging for parking decreases the need to expand parking lots into green spaces. I don't know where that comes from. It's, you know, it's not, other things create demand for more parking, not whether it's paid or not paid. And as far as expanding parking into other areas of the town, that's our choice. And when it's our choice where to do it. There's no implication that we're going to do it in ecologically sensitive areas. The highest and best use of many small lots in the downtown, which are currently used for parking, are to be developed as higher density housing. Are we thinking of passing ordinances that demand people sell their property that's used for parking and build housing? I doubt it. I don't think we have that kind of power or desire to tell people exactly the use they have to put their land to. Paid parking can encourage visitors to park once and explore the town on foot. This benefits local businesses by increasing foot traffic. Isn't that what they do now? You know, you park, you walk around, you know, you're limited for 2 hours, you're limited for 4 hours, but paid parking doesn't change what people are going to do. All right. One thing that was brought up tonight, which is kind of interesting, is this ability of townspeople to get free parking for 2 hours. Well, I agree with Chris. That's great. I have 3 vehicles registered in town. I'm here for 6 hours, I guess, for free, as long as I move around. And then, as I understand it, this business of using your program or your card to extend your parking, it's defeating the whole purpose of the program if you let people extend beyond the 2 hours or the 4 hours. What I thought was the idea of letting people extend was, if you came into town and you bought an hour on the kiosk and you discovered, oh, I want to do some more stuff, you could extend to the limit. Allowing people to extend beyond the limit, lots of people are going to say, hey, I'll spend 10 or 12 bucks and I'll be here for 5 or 6 hours. And that defeats what is claimed to be the purpose of this ordinance. The other thing, which I almost feel a conflict about bringing up, but if we all get 2 hours of free parking, then we're going to be using up a lot of those spaces that this program says we're going to do. You know, there are a couple of things in conclusion. One is, I look at this program as strictly an income-raising program. There's nothing ecological about it, or there's nothing zoning-wise about it. It's saying, does the town want to make more money off the physical space that it has? And that seems to be what we want to do, because we seem to always be looking for ways to increase revenue as opposed to reduce expenses. The other thing that we have no control over, but I can almost guarantee you that in today's culture and today's science, artificial intelligence, whatever, in a couple of years, your phone is going to ring and it's going to say, I see you parked next to Fred's Shoes. Do you want to come in and see our sale today? And the other thing is that we are so concerned about the aesthetics of our town and how it looks and how it presents itself. And we're now going to have, whatever it was, 25 or 30 parking kiosks spread around the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Ray.
Ray Andreessen, Camden. I just want to pick up on one thing Steve just mentioned about this being an income-producing program. And that's how I think most people view it, really. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't think we could get some money out of it. And I think the select board should really let the people of Camden know when the budgets are fixed and everything, what we expect to make out of this in the first year, both in fees and in fines, citations, what the cost of doing all of that is, and then report to the people of the town, the citizens of the town, hey, this was a success, this was a big loss, and it was a mistake. Thank you.
I believe that will be fairly transparent.
Mhm.
So
So any
the next step.
input on the program? So I guess why this is important to talk about now and get an idea of direction from the select board is that we need to move forward with purchasing the equipment. And what we're showing you is, what the program would look like, how many meters we would need, or not meters, sorry, kiosks we would need to move forward with purchasing. So that's why we're looking to get direction from you on this.
So in terms of finite revisions to the recommendations, the only thing that I feel like I really can't live with in the recommendations, I appreciate that they eased up the duration of time that you have, and this actually is not related to paid parking. It's a parking violation issue, but since it's included in this, and I think sometimes people last year too, when they got parking tickets, because we, at the same time as we implemented the public landing paid parking pilot program, we also changed the way that ticketing is done, or we increased the fees for a lot of ticketing. So there was some correlating of those two things. But I really think that the doubling of fines after 14 days, and I know that the number of days has been extended there, that is still entirely too punitive. And that's the kind of thing that ends up really hurting people that just haven't gotten around to it, or I don't support the doubling of fines after any amount of time. I can support the second violation, third violation sort of upticking, but I don't like that doubling. And I don't know if there needs to be a $5 increase, or just, I would prefer not to have any doubling happening at all.
Yeah, it's a good point. Can it increment $5 every 14 days?
Or maybe just not, I don't know what other places do, but does it need to go up at all? Or is there a percentage, or just whatever the lowest reasonable thing is? Because the type of people that, a lot of the time, the people that don't get around to checking their mail and paying bills and all are people that are really busy with other things, and it can really quickly turn into something that is not feasible. And then you take that person to court, and then they don't have money for that, and then you hear stories about it really spiraling for people. So I don't want that doubling part.
Or people might be on vacation and haven't received their mail.
Right, there are all kinds of reasons, and
I think my biggest concern, and before I'm going to feel comfortable saying, I mean, I'm in favor, there are no numbers attached to this. And I think before any of us can be expected to say yes or no, that as Ray says, the hard costs of the initial purchase, of the projected staffing and revenue would be an essential part of going forward, as far as I'm concerned. I just feel like it's I'm in favor theoretically. I appreciate all the consideration that's been taken in the structure, but in order to be really doing our jobs, I think we need those numbers before we can
Does the select board vote on the contract?
Yeah, you'll vote on the purchase of the equipment.
Right.
So if I remember correctly, there were numbers for the
Yes.
initial proposal, and then this is
A scaled back
a
version.
significant scaling back. And so
You're right, probably new.
the losing, it's going to be less than before. I don't personally, I think this is is this a discussion item or an action item
It's a
tonight anyway?
discussion
So
item.
yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to know just, how much we're diluting the benefits by doing this. But at the same time, I'm sure the people on the committee considered that, and, the major feedback that we're trying to accommodate here is not, I'm not sure that we're extracting enough revenue. It is them being responsive to a split select board on whether to move forward on this. So I think we probably
No,
go with
not
that. Also, the 5 o'clock thing is kind of ridiculous, considering I mean, when I come down here in the evenings, it's very difficult to find a parking spot. And so it used to end at 6, and now for some reason they want to go to 5 as the ending time. Again, I'm fine with that if the committee of people and business owners felt like that was what was needed to be successful in our minds. But I don't want to continue to bring this back forever and ever.
So in terms of actual constructive next steps, we would need to vote on the purchase, which,
Yes.
we need to see the cost.
Yes. And the model that we sent out that was based on the 40 kiosks and the expanded, it was throughout the entire 2-hour parking area. It's really easy to just change the numbers on that because it's a model.
Okay, great.
I have a real quick question, personal bias included. Which motorcycle spots are they going to take away?
Jesus.
It says we're taking away motorcycle spots. I'm curious, which ones? I don't see it on the map.
We'll send you through the more detailed map so you can see.
Why is there if the library staff permit parking is the area where it says library lot, why is there also a parking meter there?
So they want that to be paid parking and the library. So they want permit spots for library employees, and they want the rest of it to be metered because that's very heavily utilized area.
Yeah, you can almost never find a spot up there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of enforcement issues. So
Library, where do the town employees that work in the town office here park today?
Because it's not during the season when we're doing parking enforcement, some of them park right along the building here. Some of them park in that lot across the street, and then some of them park at like the public safety lot or the Knox Mill lot.
How will this affect them then?
But that's what, when you say today, you mean, are you answering the question on literal, like actually
Well,
today?
he asked for today.
Does
I
he
would say
mean-
during
But
the
during
season.
the summer, don't you make them,
Yes, they all park at the
park in-
Knox Mill lot. Unless they have other opportunities to park in other places. Like some of them have Camden Parking Company passes because they've bought them.
Okay, I think we've extracted all that we can out of this for the moment until we've got an actual plan in front of us.
I would just like to add a observation that of the time we spent tonight between the town manager's remarks and the discussion among the board and the public presentation, the majority of our discussion has been about the original value of paid parking, not so much about the plan submitted by the working group. And I think that suggests that the people should get a chance to speak up on it. That is, have a vote. I think at our last meeting, Susan, you said that a non-binding referendum would be a possibility. Audra has said it's not petitionable, but anything is petitionable.
It's not. By
The
statute,
people-
it's not, Ken.
The people can express their opinion, and then we can choose to follow that opinion or
Sure.
not. Right.
And just one final comment, because it is upsetting to hear people say that this is the town manager pushing this through. And, I spoke with my father-in-law today. I've spoken with many people who've been involved in these committees over a long period of time. And it is a running joke in Camden, the number of times that there have been citizens committees that have I would be happy to show anybody the boxes in the back of the town office that keep all of these letters and all of these studies and all of these committee recommendations over the years. This has been studied extensively. It has been recommended extensively. And each time we have so many, I'm looking at a letter here today from 1999 that was in the Camden Herald, talking about how this is the obvious solution. And there's Roger Moody's response. And so there has been so much input on this issue, and it's worked its way into the downtown master plan, into just better utilizing our existing shared space so that it frees up land uses for other places. There are many for other uses. This is not the town manager coming up with an idea. This is looking at, if you look at all of the documents and all of the past discussions and all of the times that this has been identified as a problem, this is us finally trying to make good on recommendations that have been made. And there is always the opportunity to go back. We can always say, oh no, I guess it was just so much better in Camden back when there was free parking. But this has been recommended a lot of times. And I just, I do appreciate also the background as to why, because a lot of people are looking at this for the first time. And I think it's important to know that there are many policy and academic reasons why this has been recommended. And so I think a background on the reasons why we're doing this is important to have in the packet, sometimes just for the newspaper or for people that are reading this for the first time. I had a couple people call me today who I never hear from saying, I read that memo in the packet and I was glad to hear that I would be getting 2 hours. So it was beneficial to some people. That doesn't mean we have to relitigate it every single time. So.
And I just want to make the point, you have me and other staff members here to provide professional recommendations on what we think is going to work best for the town. That's why we're here. This happens to be my background, both academically and how I started my municipal career. Land use planning, best practices in land use. This is not a new idea. This is not an original idea. This is not a radical idea. This has been done in places all over the country for decades now, ever since that book by Donald Shoup came out in 2001. So Steve Gold saying that it was a kiosk salesman, absolutely not. It's a very well-regarded academic in this field that pointed out that this is a fundamental problem that many, pretty much all communities in the United States fell into. So I'm recommending this to you, and I'm really advocating for it because I think that there are just so many policies that Camden residents have voted in favor of. They've said that they've wanted. We've got years and years and years of study and attempts to do this. And it's unequivocally a good thing for the town of Camden. And I know change is hard. And I know things like this are scary. And I know, there are people that stood up and they seemed really afraid of how this is going to happen. But I think that if everybody has an open mind and sort of looks at this, not with an eye to shoot everything down that doesn't sort of meet your preconceived notion of how this should be or paid parking. If you really come to it with an open mind, look at some of the points I've laid out, read the source material, which are the studies that we've done, and the 2 books that I told you about, you'll find that this is absolutely going to be a good thing for the town. I really, truly believe that. And I think that just have an open mind about it. And it can very much be successful for everybody involved.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to the implementation of the pesticide notification code amendment. And Jeremy, thank you for your patience in presenting this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So just some background. Voters approved overwhelmingly in November change to pesticide notification and notice requirements. And as I kind of expected, there would be some pushback. And I heard some concerns from some licensed applicators, as well as a couple of residents who hire licensed applicators. So I did reach out to, or they reached out to me, and I reached out to a couple others. But I met with at least 5 different firms now, local licensed applicators. A few of them are here, and I appreciate that they came tonight. Met with them to go over their concerns, and I think CES, Central Exterminating, provided you some recommendations or what their thoughts were on it. I have committed to them that I would spend time reviewing what we have and proposing some changes that I think are sensible and that kind of will maintain the intent of the current ordinance. And I would say that predominantly, and you've seen the emails about, the increased costs that people will have to bear. And some applicators say that they're not going to do business in town anymore because of the increased costs. And so to me, it seems like, and I think to them, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but the increased costs come down to the time that's going to require to notify, and notification is pretty extensive in what was proposed and was approved by voters. In terms of timing is an issue. The current requirement says you've got to notice within 2 days ahead of the application date. You got to provide notice to the town and to the abutters. And then beyond that notice, there's also signage requirements. The signage requirements say you need to post a sign in conspicuous locations, but at least 50 feet apart along the entire right-of-way or a private right-of-way and along the entire property lines of abutters. Pretty significant. And the signage notification requirements also detailed that the signs had to be at least 1 square foot in sign area. Well, I think the intent was good. Finding a piece of paper that is 1 square foot is hard to do. Pieces of paper like we all use every day are not a square foot. They're 8.5 by 11 inches. So, and so something, they would have to do special printing, and which is, I think, burdensome. So I have drafted some proposed changes that I think will meet address the concerns that a lot of people have had. What I'm proposing, and eventually I'll get them to you, but I would say that I do think that they'll address all these concerns. Some of the also concerns are over stinging insects, like bees. Should there be a emergency situation where someone may be having a birthday party or something and a hornet's nest is found right above where the birthday party for kids are going to be, and there's allergies or whatever. And I get that, and I have a kid who has allergies, so I understand being concerned about those issues. And tick control was another one. A lot of the providers applicators that people hire to address ticks are using what are called the EPA 25B exempt products. So I've had conversations with those folks. So what I'm looking at is tweaking these things to going from a notice of at least 22 days, it says 2 days, to 30 days. And it's going to require, and this is just what I'm thinking right now, and there's going to be time to work with the folks and then bring proposed changes to you folks for hearing. 30 days that will include estimated and proposed dates, approximate dates of the application. Applications have to comply with not only the manufacturer's recommendations, but with state and federal requirements. So if it's raining, you can't apply a product. But if I said and put in a notice, and I did all these notice to all the abutters, which is 250 feet around a property currently, that's quite extensive. And if it's 2 days and I do all the notice and all of a sudden it's pouring rain or the wind is above 15 miles an hour or whatever the requirement is where you can't apply, that can be quite challenging. So what I'm proposing and looking at is tweaking it to have a window, in essence, on when their proposed dates would be. And they still need to do a notification to those folks and provide abutters with a letter and a notice, which I think is workable and I think doable. Another thing I'm looking at is the abutters, the 250 feet, looking at just having it to be those properties that are direct abutters or properties across the street, rather than properties within 250 feet. If you're on Pearl Street and you're talking 250 feet, that can get you, in essence, blocks away, which is quite a bit of notice that is required. So signage, that's one thing. And I did, in what I'm proposing, I identified the reason why these approximate or estimated dates of application would be provided in the notice rather than that with at least 2 days ahead of time, so that they can comply with their requirements for weather conditions such as precip and wind. There's a requirement to provide signage at least 30 minutes before the applicator applies the herbicide or the pesticide. I've been told from licensed applicators that's a lot of time for them to end up sitting in their vehicles waiting for that. So I am just proposing to get rid of that 30-minute piece, and they just have to apply those signage ahead of time. So it could be 5 minutes before application as opposed to 30 minutes. Such signage currently is required to be 50 feet. Every 50 feet. I'm proposing to change that to every 200 feet along developed portions of abutting properties and along the right-of-ways. Come to mind if I have 6 acres or 20 acres and I hire someone to apply herbicides or pesticides, the current standard says you got to apply signage that entire length of your property. That might be 20 acres or 6 acres. Some of it might be forested and adjacent to someone else's forest that is no one's ever out there, or not ever, but it's not developed area. So I'm proposing to say 200 feet along the developed portion of abutting properties, which seems very reasonable to me. Changing the sizing requirement from 1 square foot to a size that's appropriate to include the information that's required. The state has minimum size requirements. CES, who provided some information to you, said they would go up higher than that in what they proposed. I just proposed to say appropriately sized, meaning they can use the state standard as long as the information that is required is able to be put on those signs. That's what I'm proposing there. And also another concern that applicators had was when they put the signs up, and they're currently required to stay up for 7 days, when they leave, they can't control what the property owner does with those signs. Likely the property owners, they're the ones who remove the signs. So have a section for maintenance of signs that would put that responsibility for maintaining those signs on the property owner, not on the licensed applicator. And then I have a whole new section on exempt applications, and that would be those that are, it shall not apply to those that are 25B exempt pesticides. And those are pesticides that are exempt from US EPA's FIFRA regulations and determined to be minimum risk pesticides, as they pose little to no risk to human and health and the environment. And then I also included that nor shall these requirements apply to the application of rodenticides used in bait stations. That's a significant issue for rodent control, mice and rat control. These are bait stations. You've seen them around, oftentimes around restaurants and downtown areas. You see them, little boxes. Those currently fall under these requirements. So it wouldn't technically apply to those. And nor the emergency applications of pesticides to address such insects as stinging insects. I mentioned that earlier. And nor to the application on a building's exterior for the treatment of wood decaying insects. Carpenter ants and things like that was another, I think, concern that people had. And I know they've talked about, and I've heard about the use of a portal to provide information, and I think that's doable. I haven't really fleshed that out yet, but will, how that would work. But I do think that what I am proposing, based on the concerns that I've heard from licensed applicators and from a handful of customers of theirs, that the requirements are just too costly and maybe go too far. I'm not going to comment on that. I have personal opinions on some of this stuff, but I think from a notification perspective and a reporting perspective, I think this does what we were intending to do. It just scales it back a little bit, and especially the signage requirements and the notice. I think those were the big ones that were very costly for people. Those are my suggestions and recommendations on how I would move this forward. I met with, as Paul, right? Met with Paul yesterday, had a great conversation. I'm working with the applicators. I think they're interested in, they know it's a concern of the public, and they're just looking for a way to have it be a little more workable for them and their clients, because their clients clearly, if you're hiring a licensed applicator to address a pesticide or a pest as defined, there's a reason for it. And it might be Lyme disease concerns, might be bee concerns, it might be, again, wood decaying insects. And so I get that. And I think the intent was right, but we kind of did it in I don't want to say too much of a hurry, but we did kind of it in a hurry the last time. And I think these minor fixes will go a long way to address their concerns and the cost concerns. I don't think these changes are going to cost them much compared to what the current requirements are, if that helps.
How do we, what's the process?
So the process.
In making changes that you're recommending.
Yeah.
Based on, A, when was this supposed to go into effect?
Yeah.
B, what do we need to do to scale it back?
I gotcha. So they go into effect January 1. It's in effect. And I have talked to the applicators that, I mean, they know what the intent is. I know what the intent is. If I see a bait station out at Long Range and say, the town hasn't gotten a notice, you're in violation. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to use common sense on applying the current regulations. And the intent of them was to provide notification. And I don't think the intent was to really cover things like bait stations or treating the exterior of buildings for wood decaying insects. And I was grappling when we had a brief conversation about 25B exempt products early on. And, I had a conversation with the state, and I think I told you that the state felt it was worthwhile to regulate those and have those, require a license to apply those. Maine is not the only state that does that. Wisconsin, other states do regulate 25B exempt products. The state still does. I just don't think the application of like geranium oils and cedar oils for the treatment of ticks necessarily requires this kind of notice requirement while they're being regulated. And I do want to share that I think concern from applicators, and it's not the first time I've heard it, is that people, because of the increase in costs, and if these folks pull back from doing business in Camden because an additional maybe $300 or whatever the cost is for doing business in Camden, their clients very well may just take it up on their own to go to Home Depot or Hammond Lumber and find a product and start treating themselves. And that's the last thing we want to. So I think by and large, licensed applicators do an appropriate job to comply with the requirements of the manufacturer and state and federal law when they're applying them. Not all. I think we have all probably seen instances where licensed applicators can be rogue, and I have seen it, and I have expressed my concerns and to the applicators what those are, and they understand. So I think the ones that we're dealing with locally are trying to do the right thing, and address the pests that homeowners and property owners are concerned about, while also understanding that, these products do and potentially do an impact on the environment. So it's my hope. And so what I'm hoping to do is get this to voters in June. Most of these folks outside of the bait stations, but like they're not out applying things until, like April, May is when things start to actually ramp up for them. Likely I'll let them speak to that. But what I'm hoping for is that I'll have within the next month finalized proposed amendments to this, which are easy, and we can do it on a workshop or talk about it in one meeting and then schedule a hearing and do a hearing the next meeting. And then it would just go to voters in June, is my hope.
You folks have been very patient. Thank you. Have you got anything you would like to add from your own personal experience in the field? I think this was a case of, we had the very best of intentions, and there have been some unintended consequences as a result of interaction with you and your customers. So if there's anything that you would like to add that would help us, I would appreciate that.
Just got a couple of things.
Thank you. Come up and just give us your name and your business.
My brother Bruce and I own Central Exterminating Services. We're in Lincolnville. We're based out of Camden originally. I think Jeremy did a really good job articulating what our thoughts were. I will add, the signage is seriously, the environmental impact of the signage that would have to be used is a concern. So we have, I think, around 780 customers in Camden.
Oh, wow.
So let's say a quarter of acre of property would take 10 signs. So times 783.
That with the 50 or with the
Every
Jeremy's
50
change?
feet.
Yeah.
Every 50 feet. So currently, to be in compliance, you're talking about 783 times 10, 7,830 signs, plastic signs, plastic stakes with a sign on it. It's a lot. The state already has a pesticide notification registry. It would have been great if people just were notified about this. They all could have got on that and all had their emails and everything ready for us to do. So that could have been another option. Thank you.
That's super interesting. That was one thing I learned from conversations with Evan also. Would you mind just telling people a little bit how that state system works?
So you can go on
I don't think many people know this.
yeah. So
you probably, maybe you don't want everybody. You're like, no, thanks.
No. Well, before I would have said that, but now I'm like, this would have been really handy because everybody's email contact information would have been available to us. So that is a thought. Anybody that who wanted to be notified or cared to be notified could easily sign up for this.
I like the way that works with people can say how they want to be notified.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. And it just makes it much easier for us because I took out my measuring wheel. I was on Mill Street the other day. Over 30 people I would have to notify for this one house.
Now, can you just, I didn't hear.
Is it 250?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you talked about the process and it's kind of cool about your email address. Where do people go if they want to be, just so people can hear it, where do people go to be part of the list that gets notified?
Board of Pesticide, State of Maine.
Board of Pesticide,
Yep.
State of Maine.
If you put in the Maine website, that should come up pretty easily.
Is it mostly rodents, or that's so interesting to me, the number of customers that you have? Is it?
Yeah. Rodent control has become the biggest part of our business for central exterminating. So yeah, we all know about the rat issue.
Is it worse in Camden comparatively to other places, or?
It's bad everywhere. Okay. I've been doing this for 20 years and it has been a huge increase, and I don't know why in the last 10 years. Perhaps it is our dumps are kind of no longer dumps, or transfer stations.
No, our dump is really, I think you actually might do stuff at the dump. I'm not sure, but
I'm
is
not
it
sure if we
climate
do.
change or?
I was going to say weather, I wonder.
Weather is
Warmer.
definitely, because the Norway rat is a dirt burrower by nature, and we used to prepare for what, 3-foot frost in Maine.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's been below a foot
Right.
in a long time. So, yeah.
I have a question on if you're moving away from every 50 feet to 200 feet.
No, from 250 to we're moving away from 250 or 50 to 250.
From 50, my question is, yeah. So if you're moving from 50 feet apart to 200 feet apart,
200 goes on.
and your lot is 185 feet long, how many signs will be there? 0, 1, or 2?
I would.
If
round it up to
it's
2.
Oh.
So even though it's every 200 feet, you're saying if your lot is less than that, you still will at least have 2 signs? Is that I saw Bruce raise his finger to 2. Is 2 your intended minimum? Is that what you used to do? Right now, it's only one sign. I'm repeating because you're not using the mic. So yeah, you just mentioned that. Right now, it's 1 sign, but typically 150-foot property line, you probably will have 2 signs on the public-facing side, traffic only? Question mark?
No, and that's where I was saying what my thoughts were. And I'm still trying to fine tune this, Chris, and I will certainly work with licensed applicators on share my drafts with them. But if you have 200 feet of frontage on the street, then you're going to have 2 signs.
Yeah.
Right. But if you have only 75 feet of frontage on the street, you'd have 1 sign, conspicuously located. And I don't want to, and I think it's important, the developed area of a property, because, oftentimes on big lots, they have the forest to the rear, and it would be that developed portion that they have to have a sign every 200 feet.
Because the intent, if I recall, is more about people walking their dogs and kids and stuff like that you don't want to have in the property, and they don't typically go through the
Stormwater runoff, and I think a lot of this was for general awareness of
Yeah.
what is being applied in Camden and
Yeah, I think that's true, too.
why. We didn't talk about rodenticides at all.
No,
at the
other
time.
than included in the definition. Correct.
Right, but it's sort of like a new mental exercise to think about, okay, do they have the potential to migrate off the property? For me, that's a lot of it. It's stuff that has the potential to move off of. I don't have a right to go to somebody else's place with my dog, sniffing around for their bait boxes on their house. Those don't migrate off
The bait
property
boxes
on their
don't
own,
migrate.
right?
They stay.
Are they weighted? How does that work?
Yeah.
So they don't wash away in
I
the.
think the only thing is it was all included
Right.
in this, but it doesn't really seem like it should be.
Does the state notification requirements, does that include rodenticides?
No, I think that's only spray treatments.
So if you're doing a spray treatment for rodents, you would need to comply with the requirements. But for bait stations, it's,
Is there a spray treatment for rodents?
I'm not sure.
No. Well, there is, but it's a repellent. It's a natural.
Oh, okay.
But-
I was like, oh my God. Something you can spray on the rats. That doesn't sound good.
I'll just. Paul McFarland, TikTok Incorporated. No, Jeremy did a great job with the help of Jesse here to cover everything, but I've been in touch with BPC, and they're actually waiting for me to get back to them to see how this all went, because they're very interested. Because what takes place is ordinances like this have been passed in other communities, and there is, without exception, issues that arise where when it becomes stringent, as Jeremy mentioned, companies that don't do business, the pesticide is going to get applied one way or another. Especially, I'm going to speak on behalf with all the services that we provide, but we all know how critical and the awareness of tick-borne illnesses are. We all know people that are sick with tick-borne illnesses now, I think. Some people have died not very far from this area. And when we start to impose our will on people to make decisions
that jeopardize their quality of life, we got to be careful of that too, because when it comes to getting to the point that when it comes to ticks, they're going to provide, they're going to treat, and you want us to do it. You don't want other people like what's going on in Southern Maine doing it, because that's when you do have issues. People aren't aware and educated on how, what, where, and when. Not to mention pollinators are a big thing, the bees and all, and we're taught to do the applications in a way that takes care of all this. You're spraying around dog bowls and things of that nature. All these other little issues, we're educated on how to do that. And as far as runoff, I know I'm going to speak on the product that I use. It has bonding agents in it. So after 6 inches of bleaching, there is no detection of the bifenthrin, which is the active ingredient within the product that I use to treat for ticks. So you don't have to worry about runoff. And that's a great product to use. It costs more, but it's the best product that's available out there to treat for ticks. And that's why I got it, because when I want to take and make an application, I want the problem to be gone, to go away from a personal perspective also, but from a business perspective, if you have people calling you all the time because it doesn't work, that's going to be a nightmare. But so I guess the point is that the notification, the other thing, the portal can take care of so much. That will alleviate so much. It'll even address the registry. If we have Camden, the town of Camden has got a portal on there for pesticide application and treatments, anybody and everybody in the town eventually, after a year or two, will be aware of that, and they can go on there and they can find out who's treating, where they're treating, what they're treating, when they're treating. Take care of all of it. That portal is key to have this program continue to the way that will be beneficial for everybody, beneficial for us and the community. So that is a very important part of it, I feel. And the signage, that's just kind of self-explanatory. If, as of now, which I think we have to function, we have to post every 50 feet. So if I go make an application for ticks, then you got CES that applies for rodents or ants. You've got the lawn guys. You're going to have my signs every 50. You're going to have someone else's signs every 50. You have some of these properties, as you know, that have 3 or 4 or 5 different people coming, let alone the Browntail Moss. Bayview Street would look like just, it would be organized littering. So, and those people aren't, like Jeremy had mentioned, they're not going to let those signs will not be there. I mean, I think that's where, I watched the meeting in August when it took place, and some of these things were discussed and arbitrarily come up with the footage, for example. I think people just weren't, okay, you're not, 50 feet is from here to the road. And so if you've got signs in between that, just, no one wants that. You wouldn't want that on your properties. And I think with what we're trying to, now that we have to function that way, I guess hopefully this spring won't be, I don't know what we can expect this spring, if this is the ordinance we're going to function by. So we got to kind of keep that in mind. And I don't know where we go from here, but I feel good about the discussions I've had with Jeremy, and we're here to support. We want to be a part of it. We want to be the ones that are doing business here. We have business interest and personal interest here. We know and love the people that are here that we're trying to take care of. So that's my 2 cents there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, is there a mechanism for, overall, we operate as a town off of the complaint-based system. And I am a frequent violator of the people above the age of 12 riding a bike on the sidewalk, for instance, yet I've never been reported because it didn't cause anybody any harm, I assume. And so how do we have enforcement priorities, or we do have the ability to call special town meetings? I suppose we should put this out to voters. When the school was voting, we could have latched it right onto the school bond referendum, but had we known. But Jeremy, do you have any suggestions for sort of the anxiety? Are there?
Yeah, I tried to allay their concerns that we're not going to be coming after them.
on April 15th, once they start applying, especially if we get through a hearing process where you guys have scheduled, done the warrant language, things are going to voters in a month and a half or 2 months from that April date. It takes us time. We've got to do the notice of violation. We have to give someone a right to appeal. That's 30 days. They have the right to appeal any decision that we make within 30 days. And then any enforcement action comes to the select board. So that's scheduling it with a meeting with you folks. So my gut says is you're not going to get any enforcement action to you before June.
I mean, and really what we're looking at here is if somebody feels like, hey, the town passed this ordinance and then this contractor came and, sprayed along this property while I was out here with my dog and I had a right to be notified and I feel like I've been the victim. My guess is that this rarely, there's sensitivity with that already. And that if there isn't a victim and a person that feels like they've been harmed by this, that there isn't likely to be an issue. I mean, the idea, I want to say sorry about the signage part, because I think what happened is exactly what you said, that, we're talking about an issue and we all said, you know what, we don't want to stop anything. So we'll just do this. We'll be this notification thing and it'll be okay. And we're all kind of thinking about the situation where we're walking, down the street and we see all of these little tiny signs sometimes that say, and you can't read them anymore. And it's like, this was applied and this was applied. And it's all these things you can't pronounce. And we're trying to say, hold on, this isn't okay anymore. You need to make it so you can see. And it was just done in this bubble. And when I read, somebody wrote the first email saying, for an 18-acre property. And I said, no, that's not right, is it? And then to read carefully and to realize that, shoot,
you did it.
That in our effort to try to make it a little better in the moment, it did do that. And that was not the intention. And I feel that I may have personally participated in that, and I'm sorry. So that I have learned a lot about things in the process. So I
think the entities that we're talking about right now that I've communicated with, we got Modern Pest here, we got TikTok here, we got CES here. I've talked with, was it Greener Grounds? Evan, right? And then another firm. These are like the local ones, the ones that and I think they understand where we're at. And I understand where they're at with this, but what used to be Chemlon is now, I don't know, do they change their name to True Green or whatever it is? Those are the firms that I really, am concerned about. I've seen, I think everyone's probably seen how they apply pesticides. It's like indiscriminate, like there is no care placed on what they're doing. I've seen them with backpack sprayers just going through people's yards, doing the whole yard, the trees, everything.
I think that's what other people have seen that kind of precipitates.
Yeah, and like even the employee who's walking in it, they're not wearing any PPE. They're just like blasting this stuff in this cloud of pesticide. And then at the end, they put a little sign out by the driveway. Meanwhile, they might have 200 feet of frontage that they just applied on, and you might walk your dog along the side. I think that's where we were going. You're walking your dog along the side of the road, and then you don't see the sign until you're at the driveway. Meanwhile, you just walk through 200 feet of herbicide potentially. So
or it's windy, or there's
right. So I guess for me, I'm going to try to reach out to some of those bigger, more national firms and let them know that this is a requirement in town. And we'll be working with these local firms. And I'm not discriminating against those big firms, but it's just like there's a different mentality, to be honest with you, that I think we can work with these local folks that are folks that have expressed concern, honestly, are the folks that are addressing rodents and the folks that are generally addressing ticks. Those are the folks that I've heard from. I haven't heard from these other bigger outfits.
Well, something, Jeremy, as well, that you mentioned lightly, but I did want to underscore that people will find a solution for themselves if they have a tick problem or a carpenter ant problem or a rodent problem.
Right.
And they can't get help from the professionals, they're going to do it themselves. And I think that was contrary to the intent of the original ordinance. And I think that's the problem that we're going to solve first. But
Yeah, I mean, that's my hope. I mean, those people can still today go out and get it, right? I mean, they don't want to hire even with the no increase in cost with the way we do this, and there's no real increase in cost, I think we can get there to them. But those people that don't want to hire someone to do it, they're still going to go do it, right? And they're still going to apply. And so hopefully we can do some, education, and maybe with the portal, we can have just a different presence about this in town and start raising awareness on the use of pesticides and herbicides on properties and the impact.
Okay, one last comment, because we're going to have a public hearing about this. We got
We are.
to rehash
We
this a couple more times, and it's getting late.
I'm Bruce Richards, Central Exterminating. I want to address a couple things. Gretchen, who's our office manager, spent hours trying to figure out how to contact people. And we've contacted people, and you get somebody says, I got 2 people that boarded my property. And then it turns out they got 24. They don't even know, and there's no way to get this. It's very hard to get the information, emails, let alone send them snail mail. Also, another thing that Jeremy was saying was the backpack sprayers. The backpack sprayers are the actual things that people use for spraying the rose stuff.
The exempt.
The exempt stuff. So when you see that, that's what they're applying, the 25, non-25 stuff. When we're applying it, or Paul's applying it, it's in a hose on a truck mount, and it's not fogging out. That's all the natural stuff that you're seeing that gets fogged out. That's why those guys aren't wearing respirators or anything like that. I just want you to make sure, and they're not applying herbicides that way. And modern guy can probably tell you exactly the same thing. So I just wanted to let you know that.
I appreciate it.
I
appreciate it. So I'll just continue to work with folks.
Yeah,
in the
appreciate
industry
that.
and come up with something that I think is doable and appropriate, and we'll get it to voters in June.
Excellent. Thank you all for your participation, really valuable. I think that
Good.
brings us to a close. Can I
Move
have a
to
motion
adjourn.
to adjourn?
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I guess Tom is in favor, or is it 4-0?
I am in favor.
Awesome.
Thank you, Tom.
Good, everyone. Thank you.